Pods cast. It will tear you in two.
You have to do the sort of like the podcast.
Rip the shirt.
Good job.
Thank you. We only have trailer quotes to go off of on the page right now.
Yeah, well, we're doing this in advance of release.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know that I could tell you.
I just took a big
Podcasts
swig
are
of seltzer,
dreams.
so I'm trying to like burp off
He's settling. Podcasts are, what's the line? Movies are dreams.
Yeah, here, look, I can run through here. If you stop making podcasts, it'll break your mother's heart. A thing no one has ever said.
Yeah, right.
Do you always have to be the center of the podcast?
Some people might ask.
A podcasts are dreams that you never forget.
There you go. That's what I was thinking.
Right. You can't just podcast something. You also have to take care of it.
It's more important than your hobby.
It's more. Can you stop?
Can
calling
you stop calling podcasting a hobby?
Good. In this family, it's the scientists versus the podcasters.
Podcasts will give you crowns in heaven and laurels on earth, but also will tear your heart out. Podcasting is no game. Podcasting is dangerous as lion's mouth. It'll bite your head off. I don't know. A lot of that.
Now get the fuck out of my podcast.
It'll be our secret podcast, just yours and mine. She says that.
Yeah. Do you know what I love?
Fabelmans.
This movie.
Yeah, you like the movie.
I was pretty fucking in love with this thing.
Introduce our podcast, then I have something to ask you.
This podcast is called Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And it is a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. Now, whenever a filmmaker we've covered in the past has a new film come out, we loop back around to catch up with them.
Yep. Beep, beep, honk, honk.
And we covered the complete second half of Steven Spielberg's career.
Yeah.
A career so big that we broke it in half, and we have yet to go back around to the first half.
Yeah, we should do it.
At this point,
It's
I almost
embarrassing.
wonder if it's our like Doughboys McDonald's, where it's like that's how we end the show.
No, we're never ending the show. Since we did the podcast on him, he has released 3 movies. Is that correct?
5?
5?
Am I wrong?
Is
The
it
Post,
5? Yeah, the Post.
Ready Player One,
Yeah,
West Side Story,
right.
The
And this.
Fabelmans.
Yeah.
Is there one other one? This is the 4th?
Is it 4? Yeah.
I feel like there's one more, but maybe I'm wrong.
I forgot about one of those. West Side Story. I guess
Right.
I mean, I didn't forget about it, but yeah. No, it's just 4 because
Okay.
we ended our series on the BFG.
Oh, okay.
A firecracker ending if there ever was one.
BFJ.
But yeah, since then,
Yes.
our man Steve has produced 4 films. Some of the directors we've covered have produced 0.
Very true.
Yeah.
Some of them have died.
Okay.
But yes.
Excuses.
But yes, no, Cameron Crowe, no new films.
Yeah.
No new films on the horaison. Although now apparently he wants to make a Dazzler movie.
No, he doesn't.
Did you read that fucking thing?
No. What thing?
There was a headline that was like, Cameron Crowe wants to make a Dazzler film for Marvel starring Taylor Swift. And I was like, what is
That
this?
sounds like an AI auto-generated.
So then
Yeah,
I read
right.
the interview and they're like, would you ever direct a superhero movie? And he's like, I don't know. You pitch me one.
Right.
And
the
they're
guy's
like-
like a Dazzler movie with Taylor Swift.
And he's like, sure. Yeah,
No,
I'd
he
do
doesn't
that.
say sure. He actually just goes, He just like makes a noise and they're like, he confirms it.
Yeah.
In talks with Kevin Feige right now.
But no new Crows.
No new Crows.
Nancy's finally making a new movie.
But no new Nancy's.
Yeah. M. Night's been keeping it up.
Yeah.
We got one new Wachowski.
Yeah.
M. Night's been the most prolific we've gone back to, right? We've only had one new Ang Lee.
I mean, I think Spielberg might be the most prolific.
M. Night, we ended on The Visit. So we've done...
Split Glass and Old.
Okay, so then it is Spielberg.
Split Glass and Old.
Right. M.
there
Night will tie him with Knock at the
hasn't
Door.
been a new Bigelow.
No.
There's been a new Nolan or 2.
There's been one.
All I have for you is a word.
Tenet. Open doors.
Verhoeven did a movie.
He did.
James L. Brooks, still quiet.
Uh-huh. Kind of sounds like another guy who might never make a film ever again.
Brad Bird did a movie.
He did?
Ang Lee has done new
One.
movies, but has been quiet.
Yeah.
Tim Burton has been making a Wednesday Addams show for Netflix for the
Thank
last
God
year.
for that.
Michael Mann finally working on something.
Yes.
Miyazaki long at work on something. Jonathan Demme, lazy bones. Just kidding. May he rest in peace.
Respect to the great man.
Miller made a new movie and he's making another one.
Yeah.
Efron.
David's checking his watch.
Where's my movie,
Nora
Nora?
Ephron, get back to work.
Gina Prince Bythewood made a movie.
Mhm.
Zemeckis.
It's a shame.
It's a shame he hasn't made anything.
It's a shame that he actually hasn't made anything, and I found out retroactively the last 5 episodes of our miniseries maybe don't exist anymore.
Right? Clements and Musker supposedly retired, although occasionally there's rumors they're working on something.
Yeah, yes.
Elaine May, that Dakota Johnson movie coming soon. Definitely going to happen.
I love it.
John Singleton, sadly dead. John Carpenter retired, but gives 4 interviews a week about how he loves video games and basketball. And then people are like, what do you think about horror movies? He's like, I don't know. Move on. Next question. And the guy's like, okay, do you like Gears of War? Gears of War is so good. He talks for 10 years about
He did that
Gears of
Godzilla
War.
marathon on Shout TV, which was pretty cool.
That's cool. I mean, he's cool, to be clear. Jane
Rules.
Campion made a new movie,
Yes.
but
We ended on her.
ended on it. Sam Raimi's working on something new.
Yes. We heard. Is it public knowledge?
Yeah, the Magic movie.
Is that public?
It is.
It is. Okay.
And-
Sam Raimi is, by all accounts, remaking Magic, which is a 70s horror movie starring Anthony Hopkins about an evil ventriloquist dummy. And it is very exciting just in that it is
cool idea.
A
Him doing
low-budget
something like
return
that.
to horror.
Low budget-ish.
It sounded like a thing he started out developing as a producer and now has decided to take over as director.
Right. Bob Fosse is directing a Dark Hawk movie for Marvel. Stanley Kubrick is doing a reboot of the Real Steel franchise.
Yep. Real Steel Revolution.
Yeah. So Steven Spielberg.
Yes. Has stayed busy. And you know what? Even for how busy he stayed, he's been even a little less prolific in the 5 years since we covered him than he has been for most of his career. Pandemic certainly adds a space there, but
I guess, but barely, honestly.
he used to be a clockwork once a year, if not 2 a year guy.
He would do he would often
with
be
a couple
once a year,
gaps.
or he would, if he did a header, a back-to-back,
Then he'd take a
then
little
he
recovery
might
time. Sure.
take a year or two. But
Sure.
The thing with him is he's in his, what I like to call, fuck it phase. Which, like, so we end on the BFG, which is him, I feel like, still being like, I'm Steven Spielberg. I make these kinds of movies. The BFG, like, oh, Steven Spielberg. It's about dreams. It's about children.
A little bit of the one for me, one for them thing of like, my tastes are maturing, but every once in a while I should go back to the Amblin well and make a classic Spielberg movie.
Since then, I feel like he's been in his fuck it phase. So
Yes.
The Post is like one of the most fuck it movies where he's like, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like this sort of like, anti-truth thing that's going on. Tom Merrill, want to knock one out?
Right.
Like,
a script lands on his desk on a
I'm
Thursday.
in
They're filming
pre-production-
by Monday. With
right. I'm in
America's two
post
most
on Ready
beloved
Player
stars.
One, and
Yes.
like they're handling the Zemeckis
Yes.
cube and all that. So
Right.
like you guys want to just fuck
I
around?
forgot that it's called the Zemeckis Cube.
Sure is.
You're trying so hard to get me to rewatch
Great
Ready
movie.
Player One, and anytime you invoke any specific of the movie, it works against your
I'm trying to
campaign.
write an article about Steven Spielberg right now, and
Uh-huh.
Ready Player One is certainly a huge part of it, because Ready Player One obviously is him being like, look at this world I've created. Hell.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then it ends with him being like, guys, you can have it, but can you just like maybe use it like twice a week?
Yeah.
Just go outside.
Sometimes
Like-
kiss a lady. Sometimes. Even if she's so horribly disfigured,
But the thing that makes
kiss
me,
a lady.
the thing that happens all the time when I
Yeah.
defend Ready Player One, a great
I'm, of
film.
course, talking about Olivia Cook having a small port wine stain on her
Disgusting.
face.
Horrible.
Yeah.
What is she like now? What is it? It's what's the
What?
Suffocato or whatever the come on, the viral
This
clip
is
of-
House of the Dragons
yeah,
press?
where she
House
goes,
of the Land of the
where
Dragons?
where Emma Darcy's like, I
Okay.
like this drink, and Olivia Cook goes, oh, stunning.
She
really great.
has one of the world's great accents.
Yes, she does. Anyway, West Side Story, that felt like Spielberg being like, I've never made a musical. I want to do it. I'm getting old. Like, and I want to remake one of my favorite movies. Fuck you.
This is what's interesting. is
And the Fabelmans is like, my parents are dead. Time to talk about the darkest secret in my life.
Now, when this movie
and a million other things.
gets announced,
Yeah.
I think you and I, a lot of people went, fuck, is he retiring? This feels like the final film you make, right? And you and I said, do you think it's just that he wants to make it while he still has his fastball? Not that he's done, but it also, like, for the first time in a long time, there is not a clear next Spielberg movie on the horizon.
Yeah.
Even with the gap of West Side Story and that release getting delayed, Fabelmans gets announced and is shooting before West Side Story comes out.
Right, because it was once he begins work on the Fabelmans once the pandemic begins.
He's a guy who's always like prepping one movie while he's posting the last.
Classically.
And the next one's filming before the previous one comes out. And now there are like a couple things he's sort of gotten loosely attached to, but it's even less than he usually flirts with, and no clear next film.
Sure. What is the thing he's working on right now? Do we know?
The most recent thing that was announced, because Spielberg will just
he always has
show interest in
a lot of things. He's sort of semi-attached.
The most recent thing I believe that was announced as an interest was the bullet.
Yeah, I don't want him to do that.
I don't either.
But then again, he's in his fuck it phase, and I respect
He's in his fuck it phase, and he's like, I want to do something based off the books rather than remake the movie or whatever. But then you look at his IMDb and you look at the things that are like listed as in development.
Yeah.
IMDb, of course, not the most reliable source.
It sort of just throws everything in there. Yeah.
They are mostly the things that he's abandoned at some point in the last 10 years. So there's the Pope movie.
The Pope movie was the one that just they never seemed to be able to crack. Yeah.
And it was so much that they couldn't find the right actor to play young Mark Rylance that they did this like 9-month search.
Well, then they shrunk Mark Rylance using a time machine.
But then
and
it was hard to make him big again. They couldn't go back.
It took forever.
Question: what kind of pope was it?
Of Rome, Bishop of Rome.
Is it old? Is it young? Is it big?
Bad,
Is it
hot,
small?
right?
Hot pope.
Big
Cold
pope.
Yeah.
That's just like that.
Tall pope.
Where it's like, we have a pope. And then it's like,
One pope, two pope, red pope, blue pope.
That's right. Green eggs and pope.
Yeah. No, it's about a kidnapping of a pope, right?
It was called The Kidnapping of Edgardo Mortata. And no, I believe it was about like a young Jewish boy who was kidnapped and raised as a Christian forcibly. It's about some like true 19th century religious story. And I believe Rylance was going to play the
He was
pope.
going to do it with Rylance and Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
And they couldn't cast the kid.
Yeah.
And then West Side Story ends up sort of leapfrogging it.
And the thing with Spielberg is that it always feels like he has all these things on the burners.
Yes.
And then if something gets hot, because he's Steven Spielberg, it can come together very quickly because he can attract the top talent.
Yes.
So he can get actors, and that only helps you get everything else you need.
Once he makes up his mind, the thing hits the ground running.
And he has the most committed, long-running set of collaborators, so he can just spool up quickly.
Yes.
Everyone can start pre-production. Everyone can start designing stuff and finding locations and getting ready. He's a fucking machine.
But even like when I was looking at
Sex machine.
Well, remember when we used to do this? Remember when we used to, when we picked a director, we theorized what their sex life was like?
Yeah. Why did we do that?
I don't know. Bad. So this movie, you're like, fuck, is he winding down? Is this a final film? Is he stepping away? He's been doing a lot of interviews recently for this movie. And he said, like, pandemic hits. West Side Story is now going to get pushed a year. His whole family, all his children, his many children who had scattered to the ends of the earth, all come back, move back home. He's with his wife and his children all day. Mm-hmm. And he's like,
which sounds nice.
I'm stir crazy. I like working.
Yeah,
film's a collaborative social medium.
That's what he said. That's very interesting. He's like, I'm so social, and I'm always like in meetings, in planning. I'm always talking with people, collaborating. It's so fun for me.
It makes sense that he doesn't like these gaps in between movies. That he constantly wants to be in these conversations.
Because if I were him,
take it easy, take it sleazy,
easy and sleazy. I'd just be like, you know what? Deposit all the checks except for the ones I get for Transformers. I'm still rich. I'm going to go live on an island.
The Transformers checks for him are the equivalent of Jay Leno not spending his Tonight Show money.
Everything else, that's the nut. Transformers, day to day.
Do you guys know the Universal Studios thing?
No, I don't know anything about
David,
this.
This is a quick anecdote and you will like
Did you see him dissing Warner Brothers, by the way? He did that
well,
too.
We're going to dig into all of this.
Okay.
When Universal decides to expand and become a direct competitor with Disney, not just a backlot tour, but a full theme park, right? They're like, the biggest move we can make is locking in Spielberg. Several of the highest grossing films are Universal, Amblin, Spielberg movies. We want them in the park, but not only that, we want his endorsement.
Yep.
We want his sort of creative guidance.
Right.
Spielberg's contract is that he gets $20 million a year from Universal in perpetuity.
Honestly, he probably deserves it. He
Yeah.
probably makes
Nice
them
work to
10
keep him.
times that amount of much money just on his catalog.
Well, when they opened, it was like
And then
E.T.,
forget the fucking the
Jaws,
rides and all that. Yeah.
Jurassic. And now, even as things have changed, it's like it's still Jurassic World. It's still Transformers, which he produced. There's so much of his shit there.
Do you remember when he was going to make a movie called Robopocalypse?
Really close to happening. Drew
And then
Goddard.
Michael Bay maybe took it over.
Yeah, Drew Goddard script.
Yeah.
And it was Anne Hathaway and Chris Hemsworth.
I don't know.
That's the thing. You look at his IMDb now, and the in development projects are mostly a graveyard of things he ended up not making that it feels like he's probably not going to circle back to.
Yeah. Yeah.
He gave up Gershwin.
To who?
Well, no, I'm sorry. There was Bernstein and Gershwin he was both interested in.
Jeez.
He gives up Bernstein to Cooper, obviously. And then there was the Gershwin Zachary Quinto thing that was announced right after the first Star Trek movie comes out.
Never happens. Right.
Never happens. Doing Harvey with Tom Hanks.
Don't do that.
These are the sort of this seems too obvious kind of projects. But anyway,
Yeah.
he is stuck at home.
Yeah.
He says, I start taking 5-hour drives because I need to get out of the house.
Right.
And I start going what do I do with my life now? What do I do? Is anything going to ever go back to normal? If I get to make a movie again, what do I want it to be? And basically starts asking himself the tough question, which is, if I only have one film left to make, what is it?
Yeah. Right.
Not, I need to retire.
Yeah. Not I'm dying.
But
Yeah,
this can all fall apart at any second. What's the one movie if I can only tell one more story? And he's like, it's the thing I've been too afraid to make my entire life, my entire career.
Right. But also, look, he's not saying this,
Mhm.
but his father died fairly recent in 2020.
Yeah.
His mother died a couple years before. Then she died
Mhm.
in 2017, I think.
Yeah.
He's not saying once my father had passed away, I was finally sort of free to do this, but it is undeniable that his dad dies and he starts working on this movie pretty much right away.
Also, there were different
And
points
his
in time.
dad died at the age of 103, by
I know,
the way. Good for his
crazy.
dad. Yeah.
Damn.
Arnold.
Yeah.
Those are good genes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Spielberg has great denim as well. But I was reading, because at different points in time, this was announced as a thing that Spielberg was developing. His sister Anne Spielberg, who's the Julia Butters character in this, basically, is a screenwriter, has written several films.
True.
At some point in the 90s or the
Yes,
early...
I can look it up. She
Right.
wrote a script.
I'll Be Home?
Yes. That exists.
Yes.
And Tony Kushner talked about it in an interview I was just reading on the
Yeah.
film stage, where he said both she's a great writer and she's got a lot of scripts that I feel like should be turned into movies that I've read.
Uh-huh.
And I've read that thing and it's good. I didn't know about it until we were close to production.
Sure.
But Kushner, and I believe this, was but I think it's better that I helped Steven write this because he needed someone outside of the family to kind
Yes.
of bounce things off of.
Right.
And for me to be that's interesting, that's less interesting, or whatever.
It makes a lot more sense.
To be a therapist, essentially.
Yes. But there was that. There were other times that he'd be maybe one of the things I'm developing is based on my childhood. And he, at those times when those movies would not come to fruition, would say, I would get too hung up on imagining how it would make the other members of my family feel. So he has never said, I finally made The Fabelmans because my dad died. But he did at different points say, I'm too afraid to make this movie because basically my parents are alive.
Right.
I don't know if I want to put my sisters through this again.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'll make my parents feel like assholes.
Spielberg has now been clear about this. The ultimate, the sort of the most painful thing in this movie, arguably, which is that we're spoiling The Fabelmans, and obviously this film's in limited release right now. It's going to be wide soon.
Yes, but we have to get into it. This is a movie that is made up of vignettes, and it's not plotty, and so we have to talk about scenes in detail.
But the whole thing of that he in his home movies essentially sort of saw this evidence of his mother being very close with another man, and then confronted her and showed her and helped her understand that she was essentially in an emotional affair that she didn't even totally know was happening. all of that is true, and he has never. That was like his dark secret.
Yes.
Like he and his mother truly were like, we're the only people who know about this.
Not only that, right? It was like, entirely secret conversations he had with his mother up until she died.
Right.
But also that the Spielberg divorce, the parents' divorce looms so large over his filmography, right? It's such a big thing. And I also think for so many people, the idea of what Spielberg actually experienced as a child was just combined with the fictionalizations of the divorce we see in the movies, where people were like, well, I assume it was just like this. Whereas like he was not Elliot's age. You know, he was 10 years older when the parents finally got divorced.
Sure. Right. It's not some exact thing. It's not a one to
right. It's not a one-to-one, but I think the things converge in people's minds. When they did the documentary a couple years ago, the HBO Spielberg documentary, that was the first time he started talking about the fact that it felt like the father abandoned the family. And what they found out when they got older was basically that he played the bad guy.
Right. That's how
allow for the younger daughters to allow the mother to remarry the friend and not have the kids hate him and her. He was like, this is a more stable family unit. I will be the one who is seen as ruining the marriage.
Right.
What Spielberg, even at that point in time, was not willing to reveal was, I knew what was going on. My mother and I would talk about it. But I think the sisters had that perception.
Yeah. That documentary is largely kind of whatever. Like, I don't know how you feel about the documentary. Like,
it's interesting. That stuff,
which is sort of at the front of it, is the so interesting. And Anne and no, not Anne. Anne's the sister. Sorry. His parents,
Leah
and Arnold.
Yeah.
Are like together,
yes,
and very sweet with each other,
yes.
And it is this fascinating footage. My problem with the documentary was that it's so heavy on the first half of his career, and it kind of yada yadas everything post Oscar.
Because we'd already done the miniseries, they knew who needs to cover.
I was just watching it, being like, yeah, I know that Harrison Ford had dysentery. I know, and I was like, I want to hear about you making Minority Report in AI. Like, I want to hear about your weird post Oscar feelings.
BFG. There should be 2 hours on BFG,
and that the movie has to. Rush it somewhere.
Yeah. No, it arguably could be longer. But anyway, yes. All that's interesting. When he finally announces the Fabelmans, and I've seen that HBO documentary, I'm like, well, I understand the story he needs to tell. Because I think some people are like, fuck, he's going to make another movie about his parents' divorce, but now minus the metaphor. And I'm like, he has really obscured what the actual dynamic of his parents' divorce was. There's a story here that he has not told, even in a fragmented way.
It sure seems that way.
So I'm amped when this movie gets announced. As you said, it very quickly comes together.
Yeah.
It's like suddenly, he's finally fucking doing it, and they're filming. They announce Dano, Rogen, Williams. They cast unknown kids. It's off and running.
Yeah.
This movie has been such an exciting prospect to me for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Our friend Jordan Hoffman saw it very early.
He did, not to blow his spot, but he did for reasons I cannot remember. Some feature or something.
Being New York's top Jew?
That maybe, honestly, maybe.
Honestly, maybe?
Honestly, maybe.
And like, fair.
Yeah, he sure is.
But when we did our 2001 episode with him, afterwards, Jordan and I went to see 3,000 Years of Longing.
That's right.
And in the cab, I was like, can you tell me everything about the Fabelmans?
Yeah, right.
Not like spoiler for me.
No, but like, give me the vibe.
Right. And I was like, so it's like a knockout, right? And he's like, look, I love it. It hit me very hard. I wonder if everyone will be able to relate to it. It's a lot sadder than people expect it to be. I think it's emotional in a different way. The dynamics of play are very odd. And then he was sort of describing it to me. I was like, God damn it, this sounds so fucking good, right? The response comes out of Toronto. It wins the People's Choice Award. It feels like this must be now the default frontrunner.
Yeah.
And then I feel like the recent wave of reviews has started to become a little more muted, where they're like, this thing's good, it's not a knockout. People are now starting to like come for it in the way that any Oscar frontrunner starts
It's
getting
inevitable. And also,
questioned.
It's a Steven Spielberg movie about himself.
Right.
Like, there's going to be hostility.
The last 3 Steven Spielberg movies that we've covered on this podcast, I liked to varying degrees, but felt disappointed by all 3 of them. Right? West Side Story became a fight.
I feel like
between
you were
the two.
fairly pro post.
I am, but I don't think it's like
I don't remember us really being
Bridge of Spies level.
Well,
What is?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I was having that conversation with Bilger recently where
Yeah.
he was like, Bridge of Spies. Now
Fucking
there's
ripped.
a movie. And
There's
I
a
was
movie.
like, my friend, you're not wrong.
And it was like, oh, he's made a fucking dad movie. This is his like late period master stage. Like Post had me really amped up. I
Yeah.
like the Post. I have trouble with Ready Player One.
Great
I
movie.
like West Side Story. I wished I loved it as much as everyone else did. There is that thing with, as you said, with Spielberg, the expectations are just so fucking high. The bar is so high with him where it's like, if you go see a Spielberg movie and you're not levitating, it feels like a disappointment. This is maybe my favorite movie I've seen in a couple of years.
Wait, your favorite movie
The Fabelmans.
of any movies?
I kind of think so.
Wow.
I was trying
Wait.
to compare the last time I felt this affected by a movie.
Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So 6 weeks ago.
That is funny. My friend, have you forgotten
Smile.
being the Ricardos?
Oh, fuck. Okay. 1 year.
That magical night you met them and were them, or they were themselves.
Look, it's been a weird couple of years, right? There
Right.
was a lack of theater going in the middle of that.
Right.
And I've gone through different emotional things, and I felt I talked about this with Ben. I haven't talked about this as much with you,
Mm.
but I've been in like a pretty bad depressive spot for the last handful of months that I'm trying to
Yes.
work my way through.
I mean, I'm aware of
You're
that.
aware of this.
Yeah.
This is the thing I had not told you because I thought if I told you this, you would get unreasonably worried, perhaps fairly. I talked about this with Ben, but I was just like, movies are not hitting for me
Oh,
anymore.
well, but I've gotten that vibe a little bit from you, though.
And
yeah.
I certainly enjoy things, but I'm just
Right.
like, it feels like the dosage is off, even when I'm watching something that is great,
Sure.
whether it's a new release or rewatching a fucking Kubrick masterpiece.
That's been
for
a
me.
this year thing for you. Because last year,
No. Yeah.
they were
I
hitting
was
for
so
you.
jazzed to be back in theaters.
Yeah.
And then this year, I'm just like, the potency is off. Even
It
the things
was-
I've enjoyed is with a ceiling.
It was concerning.
And Ben was truly like, that's the most alarming thing I've ever heard you say.
Yeah.
That's like Dan Candyman not liking candy.
I did want to tell you.
He does, he likes flowers.
Well, Candy
Fucking
runs,
who
it's his
cares?
family business.
Whatever. Jesus.
This was, and I think it's a reason I struggled with West Side Story last year, is I was like, I want this to make me feel that way. And then when it didn't, which is a thing that is not the movie's fault necessarily, I was like, I can't say I love this
Uh-huh.
because I wanted this movie to transport me.
Mm.
And this, I felt like this was a levitational movie experience for me.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, how one feels
Mm-hmm.
just, as a person,
Yes.
it affects any film watching experience so much.
Absolutely.
It's so hard to just be like an objective movie evaluation machine, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're always going to be like thinking about X that day and, that week, that month, that year.
Absolutely.
And it's,
But also, movies have been my most effective, consistent form of self-medication across my life.
I know that. That's always been, if nothing else,
Yeah.
you can just go fucking see, Robert Zemeckis' Pinocchio.
The best film of 20,
Take the edge off, right. Yeah,
22.
yeah,
But yes. And even seeing something crappy, just the experience of going to theater, getting in my head a little bit, whatever. I was just like, even the crappy movies are not able to hold my attention as well anymore. And the good movies I see, it feels like I'm like, oh, that's good. I appreciate it. It's not really hitting me at a bone deep level, even if I intellectually
Like
am
a
very
Venom Let There Be
stimulated.
Carnage.
Yes. Which is mostly an intellectual experience, that film.
Right. Like a Spiral, the Book of Saw.
Yeah.
Right.
I
From the
had,
Book of Saw.
I would say I had a little bit of that experience with Five Bloods during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other movies I think are less perfect, but that were able to hit me
Well, I
specifically
feel like
in emotional
Worst
points.
Person in the World kind of rattled you up. I'm trying to think of like
That was
other-
close. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I mean, that was my number 2 last year.
I don't remember.
Friends Dispatch, which I loved.
You love that.
But this-
you loved Matrix.
I loved. No, I was thinking.
Resurrection.
I was running through, especially like with theatrical experience, the times I felt like the thing kind of lifted me out of the seat in the last couple of years.
Right.
And yeah, those are the examples. Five Bloods I had to watch at home. Think of Ending Things, even as a flawed movie, Soul at times was able to cut through me in that kind of way. But this, I was just like so fully in love with what I was watching, and I am so eager to see it again. Ben and I saw it together.
Mhm.
David, you saw it at Toronto.
I saw it at its world premiere.
Spielberg, not a festival guy.
Not usually. Yeah, in fact, now, like, when was his? I mean, okay, he launched like Bridge of Spies at New York.
Okay, was it a secret screening?
No. It was
a proper.
it was that, so like
Okay,
that movie premiered at the New York Film Festival.
Uh-huh.
West Side Story did not premiere at a festival.
Mhm.
Ready Player One premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. No, at South
premiered
by.
at- right,
It did
yep,
premiere at
yeah,
South by.
yeah.
But it's a little.
Mhm.
The Post obviously was kind of one of those like end of year,
Yes,
like this is
Rush
the
hour.
last thing
Yes.
critics will see before they vote on
Mhm.
awards or whatever. The BFG premiered at Cannes, out of competition.
that is wild.
Lincoln was a New York film, so he'll do something like that to like throw a premiere out.
Mhm.
But TIFF
Tiffy had never done.
had never done it. I don't think.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. That's what he said when he came out and introduced it.
Yeah.
I saw this film at its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival at the Princess of Wales Theatre.
Humble
Visa screening
brag.
room. I saw it. It was the same night as Glass Onion.
Right.
So, and they were both in the same theater. So I
Mhm.
literally went to see Glass Onion, which itself is not short,
Sure.
and is also like a big old movie, right? See that
And it's
movie.
fun. You enjoy
Very
it.
fun.
Plays really well with the
bubbly,
crowd.
Crowd's
Sure.
having fun. I'm
Right.
looking at the back of Daniel Craig's head.
You're texting us. You're like, Glass Onion rules going back in for Fabelmans.
That's the
now.
thing.
And we
I
were
ran
like, what a
out-
fucking night.
Right. I ran out. I went to A&W. Shout out. What's up?
Which
got-
member of the burger family did you eat?
No, I got a chicken. I like their chicken
Ooh.
sandwich. I forget what it's called. Chicken
Cousin
sister.
chicken?
Yeah, like they all, for some reason they're all family members. I sat on like King Street or whatever. I ate it just on the sidewalk, wolfed it down.
Yeah.
Because I was like, not only am I going to a 9 p.m. showing of the Fabelmans, this movie's 2.5 hours long.
$2.50.
So I had that fear of like, am I just going to be too zonked for this?
Yeah.
Especially because like Glass Onion, jazzy, fun, loud.
Yes.
Fabelmans, my vibe of the Fabelmans was definitely like, this is not going to be a roller coaster movie.
No.
Like, this is going to be a quieter film.
Yes.
But I was.
Although they are developing a roller coaster at Universal as part of like, they have to justify $20 million a year. If you're paying him that much, you want to work his movies into
You've
the
seen
park.
your mother talking to your father's best friend. Ah! You drop suddenly. Now you're in the what do I do with my career pool. You're sort of spinning around. But then I was just wrapped by the film.
Yeah.
I was very, very taken with it.
Yeah.
Not to get too much into detail, but my mother's life my mother's family, very similar situation happened.
Yeah.
Where her mother left her father for a friend of the family in the early 60s. Same age, basically, as Spielberg. Yeah. She's maybe a few years. When was Spielberg born? 46. So she's like a few years younger than him.
Yeah.
So same era where like getting divorced was still like fairly surprising, unusual development. But although obviously like that's generation that fucking invented divorce practically.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the whole thing with Spielberg is the divorce guy. It's like he is a baby boomer, obviously, right?
Yes.
But his audience is Gen X, right? Like his movies are coming out in the 70s and 80s. These movies that are about divorce. And Gen X, that's the fucking divorce generation.
Is the thing.
All these kids of divorce
For
are watching
Spielberg's
these movies.
generation, divorce is a little rare, but then his audience is like the first major generation that really has to grow up with divorce as like a 50-50 odd.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Look,
yes.
I don't want to get into personal, private family life stuff on this episode at all.
Right.
But I will say this movie hit me really fucking hard.
Yes, I understand.
Yes.
So the Fabelmans, we both liked it.
I think it is a masterpiece.
Yes. So how many buckets of popcorn?
10?
Out of how many?
25? No, I don't know. I want to see a second time before I have a final rating.
Before you gave it buckets of popcorn.
Yes.
No, I understand.
It's not a rating you can throw out lightly. I've started using Letterboxd again, but I've been kind of loath to do the stars just because I feel like I want to free myself a little of having to put the numbers on the things, you know?
Yeah.
Because it can sometimes feel like a prison of labels and ratings.
Yes.
But I loved this movie pretty fucking thoroughly. There is that thing where I'm just like, it's sort of what Jordan warned me is like, is this just so squarely targeted at hitting everything? Like, am I just so absolutely the bullseye for this movie? You know, is my response to this disproportionate to what other people experience? It's not unique. I think you felt similarly. Some people have felt very similarly.
Look, your reaction is the only reaction you got. So
Yes.
like, don't second guess it. But you know, like, he's a filmmaker who's mattered so much to so many people. He's made these big movies for, like, you know, I think it's okay for lots of people to sort of be like thunderstruck by like him sharing, you know, his memories in this very, like, you know, raw way.
Yes.
And not too gauzy. This is not too gauzy a movie.
No, because this is the other thing. I go to a wedding. I sit next to Brandon Hines, friend of the show, past and future guest.
What's up, Brendan?
He looked handsome as shit.
Sure he did.
Wearing a little fucking bow tie with a neatly
Oh,
trimmed
of
mustache. He
course.
looked so goddamn good. It was galling. But I said, next week I get to see Fabelmans. And he
Right.
went, ugh, I am dreading that one.
Because, I mean, the trailer does kind of make it look like this syrupy, treacly kind of like movies, the magic of cinema, to be a child.
Let's say also, the poster sucks ass. The poster
Poster's
is
pretty boring.
graphic design is my
I don't know what the
passion.
poster is for this movie, to be fair. Like, I'm not really sure what I would make it.
I don't either.
Maybe a little boy with two cameras for eyes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, or a camera sticking out of his mouth, like a lens
just
sticking out of
camera
his
sticking
mouth.
out of everything.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is bad.
It's so
really
boring. I mean, like,
And it just looks like
I
a
get the meaning that led to this poster. I
do
get
too.
it.
I do
but
too.
It's very, and capture every moment is
all of it just feels
fairly bland sort
and
of.
we've talked a lot about there's been this wave of the last 10 years of it feels like certain master filmmakers of a certain ilk being like, cracks knuckles, it is time to tell you about my childhood.
Yeah, and it's interesting that this movie's coming out like the same time as Armageddon Time,
Yes.
like, which is a different kind of movie.
Yeah.
But like
The run
you
of
know,
Tree of
is-
Life, Roma, Belfast. I feel like there are 4 or 5 other
Bardo.
examples I'm forgetting. Which one did you say?
Bardo.
Bardo.
Yeah, no, there's
that's,
you know,
look, those are movies about filmmakers finally digging into their childhood and what made them a filmmaker. Bardo is a really brave story about how terrible it is to win back-to-back
Best
Best
Director
Director
Oscars.
Oscars
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the existential malaise it
You know,
puts you
this
through.
year there's like After Sun. There's, you know, another Joanna
Yeah.
Hogg movie that's a very personal
Sure.
tale. You know, like there's a lot of movies that feel like they're like filmmakers drawing from their,
Yeah,
you know.
I guess I'm talking more about the like, because I think I put Moonlight in the After Sun souvenir category. The Tree of Life, Belfast, this thing, it's like very famous filmmakers
Yeah.
being like, here is my origin story.
Right.
I know you've all wondered, right?
Yeah.
And they all have this sort of, they're not plot driven, they're sort of memoir films, right? They're vignette, they're these little glimpses, you know? And here are the dynamics, here are the relationships, here are the moments that changed the way I viewed the world.
Right.
A thing I find incredibly interesting about this movie is
Yeah.
like, there is this very weird, specific, gnarled dynamic at play that is very unique
Mhm.
in the family situation.
Mhm.
But B, I think what many people feared this movie would be is just like, right, the magic of movies. Half the movie is just the wide-eyed Spielberg analog sitting at the theater giving the Spielberg look, which to be fair is the opening shot of this film,
Yeah, but it
basically.
fucking- that we'll talk about it.
Yeah. All the movies that affected his life, him becoming a master filmmaker, whatever.
Right.
What I find so fascinating about this movie is it really feels like it is about a savant who does not understand the power that he wields.
Well, okay. I'm not sure I agree with that, but
that's
okay.
so much of the movie is
Mhm.
like, not that he comes out of the gate and he's brilliant, but that
Mhm.
everyone is like, how did you do that? You have this natural
Mhm.
facility to think through these things and figure out how to put these things on screen or whatever. And everyone around him is so emotionally affected by him doing this in one way or another.
Right.
And he does not understand it. It is an organic thing for him. It is how he knows how to express himself.
Yes.
He is not this bleeding heart artist. He's very pragmatic about getting stuff done.
We're going to talk about.
And then everyone around him is whipped into a frenzy in one way or another. And I think so much of the journey of this movie is not just him working through his family shit, which is basically, you're never going to finish working through this, but you coming to understand your parents are human beings. They are not just your parents. They are human beings with complicated, messy lives that you will never fully understand. And at some point, they will become more contemporaries to you. And you will still try to work on those relationships. But also, the end of the movie basically is him being like, I now need to figure out how to use the ability I have in a purposeful way, because there's a lot of power
Sure.
to what you can do with a movie and how it can affect people around you.
Yeah, that's all true.
That hit me really hard.
Mm-hmm.
David,
Yeah.
with Masterclass, you can learn from the world's best minds anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. Now, no spoilers, but if you're listening to this episode on the Fabelmans, you probably have either seen it or are comfortable hearing us talk about the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
This movie ends with a little masterclass.
This movie does end with no spoilers, but well, we're gonna
get into it. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I don't know.
Young
But
Sammy
yeah.
Fabelman gets a little masterclass from a master filmmaker.
A little 5-minute lecture.
Now, this is the thing. It's only 5
2-minute
minutes.
lecture. Yeah.
She goes 5 minutes. It might only be one, right? He gets a couple sentences and it changes his entire life. Imagine what you could do with hours of that sort of master insight.
Yeah.
Now, there's no John Ford masterclass.
No, I mean,
Sadly,
rip.
he didn't live long enough to see masterclass
He
exist.
doesn't know what the internet is. I'm sure he would have had his own opinions.
But
on
if
it.
you're interested in hearing,
How to make movies.
David, tell me some of the directors who got full-on masterclasses available on the platform right now.
Spike Lee, heard of him?
Yeah, good.
Teaches independent filmmaking.
Good.
Huh?
Mhm.
Ken Burns teaches documentary filmmaking.
Big.
Mira Nair teaches independent filmmaking. Jodie Foster teaches filmmaking. David Lynch, heard of him?
Yeah.
In The Fabelmans.
You know what's good?
Teaches
Hearing
creativity and film.
David Lynch talk about anything.
Yeah, it is
The
cool.
David Lynch one is particularly good because it's so much about just how ideas come to him. Like
Right.
it's about like idea generation, keeping yourself open creatively.
James Cameron.
Who?
You heard of him? Big Jim, we call him.
Big Jim.
Who are some other filmmakers?
Did you say Marty Scorsese?
Scorsese, Werner Herzog,
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard, Samuel L. Jackson teaches acting.
That one's incredible.
That sounds fun.
You might be surprised to hear that
We
I
liked the movie once.
like watching masterclasses, especially.
But obviously, it's also music, business, sports, science,
but
all
you're listening
kinds
to
of other
Blank Check.
categories.
You might be a little more excited about hearing there's one where Helen Mirren teaches you how to sit in a chair.
Exactly.
I'm not
They've
joking.
got-
She sits in a chair. She goes, "That's the hardest thing you ever are going to have to do
That's
as an
actually
actor is
fairly
walk
good.
into a room and sit in a
Sit in a
chair."
chair.
My mind went.
You got over 180 classes from a range of world-class instructors.
Mm-hmm.
The thing you've always wanted to do is closer than you think. So
So
it's very fun. So you've checked out quite a few of these, right?
I have this.
Yep.
This is my kind of thing.
It's your kind of thing.
Unsurprisingly, and nowadays you don't need to write a letter to Bernie Fine, get invited to an office, sent over to the office across the hallway, be told you have 1 minute, and get yelled at in between cigar chomps.
Right.
You could sit down at the comfort of your own home, watch hours of masters tell you how to do the things that they do.
Yeah, well, I highly recommend you check it out. This holiday, give one annual membership and get one free. Go to masterclass.com/check today. That's masterclass.com/check. Terms apply.
Ben, do you want to throw any basic
Ben,
thoughts
what
before
was
we
your
dig
reaction?
into the...
I really enjoyed it. It's such a lovely movie. It's nice to just like see a great story about characters who aren't fucking superheroes or
Well, I mean, he is a superhero. I mean, he has the
Yes,
power
of cinema.
cinema. Right,
Yeah.
there you go. Super cinema man.
what I was very excited by, because I love old technology, is that throughout the film, they're shooting and using like old technology.
And he's
not-
like
not doing
editing on an editing bay
Yeah,
and all
seeing
that
all of
stuff.
that
And like, Spielberg
Tactile.
was certainly
yeah.
exacting about like, well, this is the camera I used at that time. And like, we need to get all these things. And
Did you see the credit at the end of the film where they do the little Kodak stamp that they always put on if
Sure.
a movie's shot on Kodak film?
Right.
And it says Kodak shot on Super 8,
Hell yeah. I did not see
16,
this.
and
That
35 millimeter.
No, because I saw this film at a fucking premiere.
Yeah.
It was midnight.
Yeah.
Credits start rolling, and
People are hooting and hollering.
I want to. That's why I do. I would like to see it again and like
Yeah.
soak it in. But I remember it. Having seen it 2 months ago, I remember it. It's fairly burned on the brain.
Yeah.
And I thought it was good, and I'm gonna give it 4 bags of popcorn.
Great. Out of?
25.
Okay.
And the episode's over. Can you just hit stop?
I just have one quick
Record,
question.
post.
Is the
Right now.
popcorn extra butter? Have you ever established what the butter kind of content?
Oh, I'm sorry. I should clarify. Mine is Cheetos popcorn.
Ooh, very nice.
Thank you.
Mine's a churro popcorn. You can get that at Alamo Draft House.
Mm.
I know, disgusting. Ehrlich got it when we went to see Tar.
Yeah.
And I was like, ew.
They have the
more
elote
for me.
street corn, which is very good.
That one's because spicy is fun. You know, a little savory. I don't need sweet. I don't need a sugar
Well,
bomb.
I was just in Europe, and in both London and Paris, if you go to a movie theater, they will say,
default is sweet.
"Do you want salty or sweet?"
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they have
but
salty popcorn, sweet popcorn.
But if the default is sweet and it sucks,
and you know what I do?
you mix it.
I mix
You
it
know,
up.
A lot of people mix it. I hate it. I hate that. But
And that's why
very
you left,
bomb.
and you'll never go back.
Honestly, maybe.
Number one reason.
Might be the number one reason.
It was your
Yes.
Brexit.
It's like how in Italy, when you ask for water, like the default is sparkling water, which I love.
I do too.
And in Britain, like the default popcorn is you have to be like specify like salty popcorn, please.
Yeah.
And
It's
they're
like
okay.
in Canada, if you
I
ask
think we
for
got it in
water,
the back here.
in Canada, if you ask for water, they give you a pint glass of maple syrup. You have to be like, no, American water. I'm sorry. American water.
We're done though.
Episode's
Yeah, we're
over.
done.
Yeah,
And if you could just post it immediately.
immediately. We know it's a Thursday, 2 weeks before this episode's supposed to come out.
Right.
Yeah, we're actually
Griffin's
live.
about
so,
to. Yeah, we're live right
yeah,
now. Griffin's about to go shoot a movie,
I'm
or
about
should
to
I
shoot
not
him.
say that?
You can say that.
Okay.
I'm not saying what the movie is, just because world independent
It's the
filmmaking. who
Fabelmans
knows?
too.
It's the Fabelmans too.
Sammy's back.
Sammy's back. Sammy's revenge.
This film
Yes.
is about a little Jewish family called the Fabelmans.
Yes.
They are Sammy,
Mhm.
little Sammy, played by Matteo Francis DeFord as a young boy.
Keep
and
going. Aren't there 5
it's
more names there?
Matteo Zorion Francis DeFord.
He
I don't want to
makes
make fun of anyone.
Me sound simple.
He's got a very cute little face.
Yeah.
And Gabrielle LaBelle as a teenager who really looks like young Spielberg. Like
Yes.
really is a bit of a ringer for like when you see pictures of maybe
Yeah.
Spielberg.
Especially he's got the same schnoz. He is incredibly good in this movie.
He's excellent. I agree. He's excellent. Yeah.
And
really like
especially
him.
because it's like a character that doesn't really start to take control of the narrative. Or should I say, the performance does not really require him to take control of the narrative until like the last third of the movie, maybe.
Yeah.
You have a good chunk with the kid, and then I feel like for a lot of the movie, even though we're kind of seeing things through Sammy's eyes, he's a very passive character. He's an observer. The parents are driving the scenes more. You know? It's only the last third that Sammy starts really sort of, I don't know, driving the scenes himself.
That's true. I mean, he also puts down the camera for a bit, and that kind of puts him.
Yeah.
We can, all right. His mother, Mitzi,
Played by
Michelle Williams.
5-time nominee at this point.
4, I think. She's going to lose again. One of the most strange decisions. Of
David,
the year
here's the
from
thing.
an Oscar perspective. That's all. 4-time nominee.
Okay.
you
Blue
name them?
Valentine,
Mhm.
Brokeback Mountain,
Mhm.
My Week with Marilyn, Manchester.
Correct.
Manchester's the one it feels like she should have won.
Yeah. Who did she lose to? Because that's the Moonlight year. She lost to Viola Davis for Fences.
Oh,
It was one of those things where they were like, shit, we fucked up not giving it to Viola 2 years ago. Sorry, we have to give it to
But
Viola
that
here.
wa-
And also kind of category fraud.
That's the thing. She got fucked by the up because I think she was seen as the de facto frontrunner. Then they announced that they were running Viola in supporting, even though she had won the Tony for Best Lead.
Yeah.
And then it was like her Oscar campaign's over.
It really was. It was
Viola's
one of those.
sweeping. She's not going to win a single thing. This year, they're now sort of doing the opposite thing to Williams. Although I would argue this is a lead performance, just strategically, it is a bad move for them.
I think the kid's the lead of this movie. The movie is being told through his perspective almost entirely. I think everyone else is supporting.
I think this movie has 3 leads.
Yeah.
And I think they are Gabrielle LaBelle, Paul Dano, and Michelle Williams.
I mean, I just don't. I think it's just the kid. Everyone else is supporting. You just don't. There's just not really scenes from Mitzi's perspective in this movie at all.
No, but I also they are driving most of the film. I mean,
Yeah,
this is a
but-
complicated thing that we've talked about before, but it is this thing where like so many movies of this size really only have one female character of prominence, right?
Sure.
So it becomes this question of like, well, whereas there's clearly a one male lead and then everyone else is in support of that male lead, often the female lead of a film could still be considered supporting the male lead.
Yeah.
And so often the nominees in Best Lead Actress are movies where it's like, this is a character study of this one woman. It is rare that you get like the Felicity Jones nomination where it's like you are Stephen Hawking's wife and we are considering you the co-lead of the movie,
Right.
which is fair.
She is absolutely
correct.
in that movie.
But
right,
more
yeah.
often you have the Alicia Vikander thing where it's like you are the lead of this movie and they are now arguing that you are in support to Eddie Redmayne,
But they have put Dano in supporting.
which I think is wrong.
No, it's right. They're both. Everyone is supporting in this movie except for.
I think like Hirsch and
something that annoyed me was that someone on the internet, who I shall not name, but who is connected to this movie, said that Michelle Williams had like stopwatch more time in this movie than she did in My Week with Marilyn, where she was nominated for Best Lead Actor. That movie is an hour shorter than this movie. Stopwatching is stupid. Stop telling me how many minutes someone is on screen. This movie is 151 minutes long.
I still think she's the lead at the movie.
I can hear the argument. It's not like one of those things where I'm like outrageous.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, I just think the kid's the lead. It's about him, Sammy Fabelman.
I think a film could have multiple leads. It could have a male and a female lead.
Yeah,
And I
it
think
can.
It's Sam, by the way.
Sammy.
Yeah, he corrects everybody.
Yeah, I know. Do you think he was Stevie? Like, is that? I wonder if that's. Like
I was doing the math in my head of was it Stevie versus Steve or Steven?
Yeah,
But it must have been.
You were always. You never had any. You're Griffin. Griff, of course.
Yeah.
I always hated Benny.
Benny's tough.
Benny's
I just
tough.
think about it because I was never Dave.
Were you ever Davey?
Not really. Maybe like a little bit. No.
The other math I was trying to do watching it is they call when anti-Semitism is on the rise. Another thing in this movie that I found very hard to relate to through a present day lens of my own experience. The kids mock him at school by calling him Bagelman.
Yes.
And I'm like, were they calling him Spiel Bagel?
Possibly. Yes. He said that he only had one bully.
Yeah.
That the second bully is invented.
Right.
But
that
he has
much
said
like
that
in this
that was-
movie,
that was, you know.
he only experienced anti-Semitism once they moved to California.
Yeah. Which
He
is
was like, in
interesting.
Arizona, I did feel like we are weird that we are Jewish, but there
Yeah.
was never any. Part of it's also maybe just teen years. It's
Yeah,
the
maybe,
ageism,
but
whatever.
also that it's like in the movie, it sort of specifies in Arizona he had a lot of like Hispanic friends. That maybe it was just a little more of a genuine melting pot because
Yeah.
Arizona in the '60s is like still like a growing. Like it's the last state admitted until Alaska and Hawaii.
I think there'll ever be a 51.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, in our lifetime for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, probably Puerto Rico and
That's what I was
Washington
gonna
D.C.
say.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
So
Well,
there'll
those
probably
are the
be
two
two,
obvious ones.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'll have that. I think that will happen eventually. I know it's now become a like insane divisive
By the time this
political
episode
issue.
comes out,
Yeah, it's gonna happen actually tomorrow.
2 weeks.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to fucking reprint all the flags. No. Okay, so
Where do you put the stars? Just start a new line?
Yeah, that would be funny.
But he
You do the thing where you offset him. Some has 10, some has or whatever. Yeah.
he all the interviews and profiles he's been doing for this movie have been fascinating, and he's also been talking a lot about his opinions on the state of the film industry and the medium and the culture around it and all this sort of stuff, and even saying like these are things I would not have said 2 years ago. Like the pandemic has kind of changed me where I now am not even thinking strategically about my status as the elder statesman of America cinema. It's sort of the most populist figure of filmmaking. I'm just giving you my honest answers, my fears, and my beliefs on these things. But he, all those pieces I highly recommend reading. The A.O. Scott interview that ran the New York Times is particularly good. But he was saying, they were like, it's surprising that you experienced more anti-Semitism when you went to California. And he was just like, there's a big difference between California and Hollywood.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between California and the film industry. I did not experience anti-Semitism in the film industry.
No.
Sure. But you can feel a far ways away. And I feel like there are a lot of other filmmakers who grew up in California where you're like, oh, you grew up around the movies. And they're like, I grew up in a very different part of California. Hollywood felt as far away as if it was on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
You do feel that when they get to California, this part of the movie where it's like, he doesn't feel closer to the film industry.
Not at all. It's not like he comes over the hills and we're like seeing
You're there.
palm trees and
Right.
the Hollywood sign or whatever. He lived in sorry, I wanted to where was it? Saratoga, California, which is in basically these days you would call it the Silicon Valley. Because like that's the idea. His dad's a computer engineer. Like that's where he's so it's in Santa Clara County. But yeah, it's like you're, many hours from LA.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know the history of California that well, but yeah, in the 60s, yeah, there's less It's different. It's very different from what it
It's
would
very
be today.
different.
Yes.
Opening of this movie.
The opening of this movie is Steven Spielberg walks on stage and he says like F is for friend and A is I don't know what I'm doing. The opening of this movie is Sammy and his parents go to see The Greatest Show on Earth.
Did you start in the car or do you start on the corner outside?
I believe you start in the car because the mom's kind of prepping him for like
Right.
like what the movie's going to be like.
But there's this very deliberate choice of you are framing it from the level of the kid, from little Sammy, for these first two little bits where the parents' heads are cut off. They are abstracted like Charlie Brown adults.
Sure. And they are talking like
but it's like you set up the whole dynamic, much in the way the Tree of Life is Malik being like, my two parents represent the two sides of my voice as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a woman of nature. My father was a man of anger and brutality. Right.
And in this, it's like his dad is this loving,
Yes.
but very like thoughtful and quiet and analytical person.
Yes.
Who like is just very logical.
Yes.
And very cool-headed.
Right.
And his mother is this like fucking babbling brook of a person who's like artistic and constrained.
Unstructured, emotional, impulsive.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And that vibe is present pretty much immediately.
And the opening of this movie, the whole, like, it's one of these things where it's like the beginning is the whole movie in a nutshell. The ending is the whole movie in a nutshell, right? Like there's so many scenes in this film that also function as a microcosm of the entire movie. But here it is, this kid stuck between two adults trying to explain to him what a movie is. He's about to see a movie for the first time in a theater, and he cannot even understand what the concept is.
Right.
You don't hear him ask the question. You start the film with them mid-explanation, and her explanation is like, it's a dream that you never wake up from, but it's not like a bad dream. It's a good dream. And he's like, there's a man in a booth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a device that has a really strong light bulb.
He's fucking JD Amato-ing it. He's talking about persistence of vision. He's talking about, 24 frames per second,
Right.
all this stuff. Yeah.
You go to the street outside, you see that it's the greatest show on earth, the Cecil B. DeMille movie.
Yeah.
And they're still arguing about, is he ready for this? Is it too young? What is this going to be? Whatever. They're cut off. I think the first time you see their faces, I don't remember if the camera tilts up at that point or if you see them only when you cut into the theater. But immediately, it's just like this kid is entranced, right?
He is, but
it also doesn't feel like, let me say, Belfast, where it feels like every shot of the kid feels underlined with, this is the most important moment of my entire life.
The whole fear I had of this movie,
Yes,
is the whole fear you have with any of these movies where it's like John Lennon sees a guitar and it's like, oh. I'll fancy me one of those, and you're like, okay, like
he steps on a beetle, looks at the bottom of his shoe. I wish I would have met him.
Mick Jagger sees a rock rolling down the hill.
Bee stings his lips.
Yeah, right.
Looks in the mirror. Maybe I should keep it this way.
Yeah, John Bonham has lead poisoning and then sees the Hindenburg on TV. I don't know. Just keep doing band names.
He keeps eating sushi. Right. While watching the Hindenburg disaster.
Roy Davies has a kink in his
neck.
Pants.
He does.
His hose. In his garden hose.
In his garden hose.
Yeah.
Yes. He can't water his plants.
He can't.
I'll say this, Griffin. I don't know if you had this opinion. I've never seen The Greatest Show on Earth.
I have not either.
It is I've seen most Best Picture winners, and that's one of the ones I've never seen because it's one of those like super long Cecil B. DeMille movies where you're like, oh, aren't those things kind of like bloated and all
I also
about
feel like it gets lumped into that like around the world 90 days thing where you're like, this is like a frothy, silly movie that just was the most movie that year, and they gave it Best Picture out of like celebrate the industry, celebrate the jobs it created. But does anyone actually think this is a great movie?
Yes, and I just got to say the clip they show, which is this train crash, I was like, God damn, this
gotta
movie
watch this fucking thing.
Like, I want to see this thing tomorrow.
But what I like,
Cameron Bailey program it at TIFF. I'll go. Like,
what I like is that this opening scene is setting up this dynamic of like Arnold being this worrywart, being like, I think he's too young. He's not going to understand what's happening. This is going to scar him, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, how silly to think that perhaps Steven Spielberg wasn't ready to watch a movie, Mr. Movies himself.
Yeah.
And you cut to this kid and you're like, oh, the movie fucked him up.
That's what love. That's when I was like, okay,
I'm leaning in.
We're dealing with a much more interesting thing here because he starts making these little movies to recreate what he saw.
And his look up at the screen, it's like he's in awe of this thing, but it also feels like it's confusion. He is overwhelmed. And then once the crash happens, it is fear. And then you have this amazing cut back to the car and the kid's like frozen, like he just came out of Vietnam.
Yes.
And the parents are arguing, I told you.
Right. And he's got this little model train set, another very like techie gift that his dad is, interested in.
For Hanukkah, every night they give him a new car.
Which is cool.
And on the final night, they give him the little, whatever you call it, not the remote, but the little switch.
Yeah.
He's finally got the full kit.
I thought of you.
I mean, I never had a model train set, partly because I lived in the city and we didn't have like a house with like a big, because they take up space.
Yes.
I had like Brios, right? I had other, things like that.
Thomas.
Little toy trains. Well, Thomas.
I had a Thomas Brio set, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That was maybe more
Go off.
James's.
But I never had like, the classic, like with an electric
Lionel.
current. Yes. They do seem very cool.
It's also one of these generational things where it's like a lot of the guys who grew up with the train sets never got over it. Like Frank Sinatra, there were like photo shoots of him in his little conductor outfit with his little hat in his basement with the full Lionel set when he's like 80.
Right.
Weird.
Like ring-a-ding-ding.
A ring-a-ding-ding.
Like the coolest man in the world. And he's like, let me go fire up some trains. Like I think it was such a seminal thing for a lot of these guys, the train set. Yeah.
And
I say this as a man who lives in a fucking apartment full of toys, but go on. Yeah.
But you don't have a train set.
I don't, because I'm a big boy.
You're a big boy. His mother's
I've got
the
a big,
one.
strong
His
action
mother's the
figures.
one who realizes it. Like he is trying to emotionally process.
Yes.
This sort of like somewhat scary thing he saw.
Right.
By filming it over and over again and kind of like exerting control over it. Translating it.
He first crashes the train on his own. And then they're like, you almost broke this. And then she realizes you need to gain control of this. I'm giving you the camera.
Yes.
The camera's the next step of like, I think if you understand that this is how that was made.
Which I think it's like the camera they already have, right? Because the dad is using it at Christmas. I mean, at Hanukkah, right? Like
movies,
And also there's the great thing very early on where the kids are complaining that their house has no Christmas lights because they're Jews.
Yes.
Which I love.
I also early on turned to Ben and when Jeannie Berlin's on screen and I go, that's fucking Jeannie Berlin. And I saw his mind blown.
She's really good in this.
You wish she was in it more, but yeah.
Sure. Well, and I was just so interested by Spielberg taking us into this kid's story that way.
Yes.
Not like I saw movies and it was a thunderbolt for me to want to make movies.
Right.
And it's more like, no, movies like got to me so intensely
Yes.
that I had to work through it by making movies.
And not only that it's like you cut, she's sort of like, we'll make this, it's our little secret movie.
Yeah.
Right? Then you cut to them watching it. And she's like, that's impressive. And he's like, took a lot of takes to get it right.
Right.
And you're like, oh, that's the weird combination of the dad thing that he does have this mind about, like, you have to work on something until you get it perfect. You have to like R&D it. And already there's this weird compulsive behavior of like, well, it's not looking right because I don't have animals in the trains. Let me pull the animals out of my other toy and put them in the train cars. Let me figure out the angles and whatever. There is this savant aspect. It's this thing that everyone talks about with Spielberg where they're just like, this guy thinks cinematically. He was pretty much fully formed by the time he was 20 and then only got better. It does not feel like there was really a learning curve with him. He would just look at things and go like, why doesn't this look better? And he would read a script and understand immediately how to translate that into images without needing to think it through, really. You know?
Yeah, he was the classic, right? Like, put the camera there, put the camera there. I know exactly what we're doing. Like, I'm 20 years old. Welcome to Columbo.
Right. So you don't get the sense in this moment of the kid loves making movies. He's found his hobby. You just feel like this has helped him conquer this thing. And also he's weirdly good at this thing.
His mother also is just providing him the space to do this without being ashamed of it. Or like, she's trying to give him the artistic space she feels she lacks.
Yes.
Right. Like, or like that she has had to sacrifice by becoming a mother and a housewife in 1950s America.
Yes.
Right. Like, it's like, well, my children, she's not, it feels the dad, Bert, he's called Bert in the movie. Bert is not like the kind of dad who's like, you cannot do this. You must like do your math homework because you will be an engineer. Like, but he certainly is less he has less like emotional awareness of like why it might be fun to do like make movies, right?
He's like supportive.
He's
of
supportive.
the idea she's going to go on TV and play piano, but it's also like, what a fun thing for you to do one time. There's that kind of energy of like, how exciting.
Yes. So it's like, I appreciate that he is not some like cartoon disciplinarian dad.
No.
And she is not some, just sort of like endlessly perfect angel mother. Because Lord knows, you've mentioned the Tree of Life a couple times. We should probably stop mentioning it because this movie is so different from it. But
it's an interesting
the mom in
counterpoint.
that movie is an angel.
She's
Mother
like
literally Mother Nature.
Right.
And she's played by Jessica Chastain. She's always drinking Diet Coke. She's got crazy nails. I'm conflating two performances. Very funny. And and in this, it's like Mitzi. Pretty quickly, you're like, this is a person. This is a lot of person.
This is like a person who feels a little borderline.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Like this is just like a really day-to-day kind of person where you're like, this must be such a fun person to be around, but not all the time.
David, I can save us a lot of time. For the second time in 2 weeks, I have to invoke the one thing that sums up this dynamic perfectly. They're a real Dharma and Greg.
Yeah, there you go. One of them's always putting on his suit and tie.
Absolutely.
And the other one's reading a book about Buddhism.
Upside down.
Right. She's got a flower in her hair. Flowers don't go in here, they go in pots.
But this is what's so funny is like they don't have this oil and vinegar relationship. It doesn't feel like either one's being shitty to the other one.
Yeah.
It does just feel like there are fundamental things that they do not know how to communicate to each other. They both respect each other.
Yeah.
Right? They're both like very impressed.
That's what I mean. It's
with
like,
the other.
He's not dismissive
at all
of the fact that she's, artistic. That
and
she
is neither is she of the computer stuff.
No, he's a very impressive person, but they do feel kind of like in separate bubbles a little bit.
And there's the incredible moment. I think it's the introduction.
It's the introduction.
It's the introduction of the Rogen character.
Seth Rogen playing Benny.
Uncle Benny.
Uncle Benny, who is not their uncle.
An honorific.
But he is Bert's best friend and coworker.
Right. And he
works with him at the computer.
Basically the fun dad. It very much feels like he's an adjunct parent. He is joining them on the thing. Sometimes he's taken more a role of being the big brother to the kids. Sometimes it does feel like he is picking up the extra slack.
But he's also just like the guy who's like, loosen up, Bert. You know, like, you old workaholic.
But he also maybe focuses her a little bit. Like he's sort of this in-between for the two of them.
What I love about this performance by Seth Rogen.
Very well cast.
Who is very well cast.
Yes.
Is that he's not that funny.
Correct.
Because I was like, oh, he's going to be Seth Rogen.
And I'm curious to see if people view this as a failure on his part. Because I similarly think it is a strength of the movie.
He's a regular guy.
Yes.
He's a little fun. He tells jokes, but they're like dad jokes that you're sort of like, okay.
Right.
He's not like, because the whole thing with Seth Rogen, obviously, is he's so charming. And that's how he's become this like unconventional movie star.
He's not Uncle Buck. He's not. Right.
He's just like a bit chiller and a bit more fun than Bert, who's a little tightly wound and a little like obsessive.
This moment at
he's a very rational alternative, not some like extreme alternative.
This moment at the dinner, right? Because they get the film back from the train.
Yep, sure.
It's, I think, final night of Hanukkah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or whatever dinner it is.
You just saw the movie. I don't remember the exact.
She puts the film reel in the apron. The kid is just dying to go watch it, project it in the closet, right? And he's just sitting here at dinner, like fucking white knuckling it, waiting for it to be over, watching his dad try to explain to the rest of the family, including Jeannie Berlin. Her mom is played by, I always forget this actress's name, who's so good.
I love her, and her name is Robin Bartlett.
Right. She, of course, was in Inside Llewyn Davis and 1,000 other things.
Yeah, well, she's on. I feel like
she's
Mad About You. She
yes.
She was the someone's mom, right?
Sure.
I can't remember. Yeah.
But
no, she was the sister, the lesbian sister. Sure. That's right. Yeah. She's a great actress.
Great actress. But this full family dinner that Benny is invited to, and Dano's character is trying to explain the breakthrough they just made in the technology. He's like, this huge thing, these advancements. Here's what's now possible because of this new device. Yada, yada, yada. And he's speaking in Greek to everyone at the table, right?
Yeah.
And she's sort of glowing, like she can tell it's exciting. She's impressed by how intelligent her husband is. And then Benny, in like 2 sentences, puts it in layman's terms.
Right.
Whatever analogy he comes up with. He's like, imagine it's a mailbox and now we have the key.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And her response is, I love your brain, and I love it even more when he's able to translate it to me. I'm probably fucking up the exact
But that's
verbiage
the
of this
thing,
line,
yes,
but it's that thing. It's not like, finally, someone speaking my language. It's like, he's a conduit to understanding the man she does truly love, but cannot understand.
He's the turnkey for her sometimes, and that's he's an elemental part of their relationship, and like none of them even totally get that.
And the whole family dynamic. He's elemental to all of them, where once they announce we have to move, there's a new job on the horizon. The first question from everybody is, what about Benny?
Now, here's the thing about Seth Rogen in this movie. Looking like a fucking snack.
He looks
he's Foxaholic, huh?
He looks good in this movie.
This era of Rogen, like he's been like, I feel like his like fashion game is like, he's just looking so good these days.
Good. He does. He's actually, you're right. He's his current like sort of like, I'm a fairly chill guy on Twitter who does pottery and like he's got a whole good vibe right now. Kind of a sexy vibe.
He also is one of these guys who's quietly become a mogul without doing any of the things that we find unbearable when we talk about these guys becoming moguls, because it does feel purely driven by the shit he likes.
Right.
It's like, I'm now selling weed and pottery because I like doing this.
Right.
We now produce a bunch of projects. They are all things that we're clearly big fans of and are using our clout to help get made.
Right.
It doesn't feel like he's investing in tech companies and shit. You know?
Yeah.
But also, like, Seth Rogen always seemed like he was 40.
A little bit. Sure.
He was like the youngest cast member on Freaks and Geeks, and you were like, why'd they cast this 30-year-old? And you were like, he's younger than the geeks.
Yeah. He was like, yes, you're right.
Right? There's like that whole thing. And then even in 40-Year-Old Virgin, Kevin Smith talks about seeing that movie and being like, who's this amazing 45-year-old character actor I've never seen before?
Yeah.
Where's this guy been? It's like, he's 22. He was on 2 failed TV shows. He's now just turned 40, I think. And it does feel like, talking about him looking good, he's like hit the age he was always meant to be.
He's really in a good spot.
He's in a good spot.
And yet, how many movies has he made recently?
Well, because he does so many other things, he's pretty selective about what he chooses to do. Like, Long Shot American Pickle were his first 2 vehicles in a while.
You know what? He's really good in American Pickle.
I almost gave him a fucking nomination that year.
That movie is fun.
That movie is fun. He's kind of incredibly good in it.
Donkey Kong in the Mario Brothers movie.
Stole the role from Russell.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, so he's great in this movie. I read some interview with him where he sort of talked about, like, I initially was kind of going for more of a Seth Rogen thing. Like, I was being a little more funny and garrulous and improv-y. And they were like, Seth?
Take it
No,
down.
no.
Yeah.
Yes. And he was like, okay. So Seth Rogen is the best friend, Benny. And the first chunk of the movie when he's little, what are some other things that happen? I mean, the whole big thing obviously is that they live in New Jersey, but they move to Arizona for this career opportunity. They're uprooting Mitzi's life.
Yes.
And the kids' lives, but the kids are fairly small.
And the
Mitzi maybe has just had a baby or is about to. Because there's 3 sisters, obviously.
Yes. And the big thing is, what about Benny?
Yes. And it's like, right, like Benny is basically like clearly not as good a computer engineer as Bert, but Bert keeps kind of bringing him with him to every new job as sort of like using his influence to do it, because Mitzi is like, we need to have Bert in our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, his response is basically like, I just got hired here. I have to make a good impression. I can't flex my muscle yet. I can't demand that they hire Benny.
Right.
And she's like, you're a supervisor. One of your jobs is to hire people. So get to the job and then hire Benny.
And it's always very well done, because it's this unspoken thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to ask the question of like, why are you so obsessed with Benny being with us?
But he also understands the kids are obsessed with him. Like, it's
right, but he doesn't want to acknowledge the jealousy.
Of course.
And I'm watching this movie. I know the Spielberg story. I know that Mitzi that his mother left his father for the father's best friend.
Yeah.
I know this.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the movie thinking, are they already having an
Absolutely.
affair? Right.
Interesting.
And the whole thing, of course, the big twist of this movie is like she doesn't even know. It's unconscious for her.
Yeah.
See, I had a different interpretation where I was thinking this is a single man It's the 60s.
Maybe he's gay or whatever.
Right.
Sure.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. But
yeah,
no,
but you didn't know where it's going.
she's horned
Yeah.
up for him.
No, that's an obvious interpretation. Is he a confirmed bachelor?
Right.
Why does he spend all this time with this family?
Yeah.
Right?
I really didn't see it coming.
Yeah. No, and I do think ultimately, I mean, we're spoiling all this, but like, basically, this movie leaves me with the impression that like, until the moment they actually decide they are getting divorced, the two of them have maybe kissed twice.
Right.
That's
this is not
basically the
something
vibe I
where
get.
it was an affair that lasted for years and finally came into the open or whatever.
It's this emotional affair thing, and
It's
I
an
do
emotional,
think
it's a true emotional
you
affair.
hear about, you witness yourself in your own life, sometimes these things where it's like, here's a happily married couple, and then there's this weird third person.
Right.
And sometimes it feels like it is one member of a marriage being like, I understand there is some dynamic of their personality that I cannot meet, and they need this other person.
Yeah.
And I think there are healthy boundaries on this. I do not believe this slips into other territories. I do not believe this becomes physical.
Right.
I don't watch sports games with them. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes you even see that with like two couples.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, these two couples hang out, and the two people in the middle have this one thing they like to do together, and everyone's kind of fine with it.
Yes.
But there are always the questions.
There's always the questions.
And with someone like Benny, when the kids also sort of view him as an uncle, that he is a family member, he is a part of the unit, he is so deeply entrenched in the thing, it's even more complicated.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember much else with him as a little kid. What else is there apart from making?
There's that
movies?
tornado sequence.
Yeah, which is the sort of early
huge.
like sign where you're like, oh, she's like quite manic. Like she's given to doing like plainly irrational things.
Right. Tornado's
Yes.
coming. She like rounds up all the kids. She hands him the baby and then takes all the adult kids or, walking kids.
Yeah, no, throws them in the car and just like
And
drives
he's just
towards the
left
tornado.
it.
Yeah.
Right. And was like, we got to see this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that feels like a story you hear from a friend where they're like, this is something that happened to me as a kid that when I was a kid, I was like, well, that was fun and crazy.
Yeah.
And then with the perspective of adulthood, I'm like, what the hell were my parents doing? Or like, what the hell was my brother doing? Or whatever, like, what was that?
Here's the thing I love about this movie
Yeah.
is that, invoking the bad people, but like Jeffrey Wells, the Voldemort of the online film community,
Mhm.
right, was at our screening.
Yeah.
Looking like a real warlock. And he posted his review of this that was just like, this movie is so self-indulgent. You would not care about this kid's life if this kid didn't grow up to be Steven Spielberg. And you're like,
I hate
well,
this criticism.
guess what?
He did.
He did. And that's the fucking framework we're all watching this movie under. Right?
Yeah.
You understand the building blocks that this is working towards. Part of the narrative tension of this movie is knowing. And then this guy goes on to make this movie and also all the other movies that have like changed American culture over the last 50 years and all that sort of shit.
Yeah, like, get over it. Get over it.
There are other, and I'm not trying to throw any of these movies under the bus, but some of these other memoir-y master filmmaker revisits his childhood movies, I do feel get a little more self-indulgent because they're just caught up in the like the day-to-day, the living, the whatever. Spielberg is such a natural storyteller and has such an eye on the audience.
Entertainer, yes.
An entertainer. That every scene in this movie has a real narrative point to it, even if it is not a linear A to B plot.
Right.
Every scene is giving you a very specific story beat that at least builds out the characters in the world, right? And the way you're talking about this scene feeling like the story that an adult tells later and now has like a new perspective on, this movie to me, and this will sound like a backhanded compliment, it is not at all. I've recently got way back into listening to WTF. I've been locking the gates left and right.
Yeah, you have.
This movie feels like the best episodes of WTF where you're like, here's an adult who has gone through decades of therapy, is now like 50 years old, is talking to Mark Maron, and is able to isolate the 15 stories in their life that function as a microcosm of who they are and how they turned out the way they did.
Right. He is good at it.
You listen to the Rosie Perez episode, and it's just like, she has the 15 crystallized
I
moments.
should listen to the Rosie
It's
Perez episode.
so good. But she has the one where she's like, I remember I was a child and this happened. And someone said this to me and I've spent the last 30 years unpacking this. And it's like every scene in this feels like the scene you talk about forever. Yeah. Spielberg in this, I think it was the Scott interview, was saying
It's
how
in the Times, you can read it. Yeah.
this movie feels so therapeutic. It almost feels Jungian in terms of him working through all these things.
Right.
And he was like, what's your relationship with therapy been? And he's like, it's making movies.
Hey, man.
It's always been my thing.
believe
I
it.
abstract it. I work in metaphor. And he's like, have you ever seen a therapist? And he said, when I was like 18,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a therapist to get out of the draft.
Sure. Classic.
And I saw him for like 5 months. And at the end of those 5 months, when I wanted him to think I was crazy, it turned out that he was very pro-war and he would not sign.
Sure. So it didn't even work.
So it was a waste. And he was like, that's my entire relationship with therapy across my life. But it does feel like these are the scenes where he's worked through these stories for the last 60 plus years and now understands the importance of what they represent.
Right.
Yes. David.
Yep.
Ho, ho, ho.
What's going on with you?
Merry Dadgrass.
Good.
Sounds a little like Christmas.
Shh, does it?
It ends with an AS.
Well, I'm stressed over the holidays this year.
I can't imagine why.
You've got all these impossible to shop for family members.
The boss, baby.
Oh, it's just a stressful time. I need someone to take the edge off.
What are you
to
getting her?
enjoy the season?
Have you
I
picked
don't.
presents? You don't know. You're so stressed out about it. You need to hit some Dadgrass.
Yes, I do. Dadgrass has pre-rolled joints.
Yeah.
Hemp flour.
Yes.
Tinctures.
Mm-hmm.
Gummies.
Sure.
CBD dog bones.
Wait a second.
What?
Ben?
That's sick.
Is that
Ben?
to chill your dog out?
A single tear just dripped down Ben's.
It can't be for dogs. That's just for dudes who are dogs.
That's just for
You want a
Ben's.
bone to
Hell
gnaw on.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's now available for everyone in the family. No, dad, moms, dogs. This is what the copy says.
Oh my God.
You and your loved ones can chill out without getting stoned to the bone because the whole thing with Dadgrass CBD joints, flour, and tinctures is it's 100% organic hemp to chill you out without getting you stoned, okay?
Okay, now we need to ask right now, I think, before this ad read goes on any further. We have decided, I think it has been announced at this point, January on Patreon, we're going to do commentaries on the Kotze trilogy.
Yeah.
Ben, if the fine folks at Dadgrass send us CBD dog bones,
Go on.
will you eat one for those commentaries?
Crunch, crunch, crunch.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Is that an exclusive that we're announcing that?
I don't know if we've announced it anywhere else now, but I can't think of a better place to announce it than
Fair
an ad
enough.
read for Dadgrass.
Fair enough. Well, Dadgrass is legal, organic, smokable hemp that relaxes your body and mellows your mind. They got 100% organic pre-rolled joints. It's low in THC, high in CBD, so you can enjoy the effects of CBD without, keeping a clear head.
Sure.
And they've got all kinds of like tinctures and gummies and fun things like that.
Clear head
and
so
they've
you
got
can
the
still
dog bones.
appreciate the Philip Glass music while also vibing out hard.
Dadgrass. All Dadgrass products are federally legal for ages 18 and over. It ships right to your door anywhere in the U.S. So right now, Dadgrass is offering our listeners 20% off your first order when you go to dadgrass.com/check. Go to dadgrass.com/check for 20% off your first order. That's dadgrass.com/check.
Merry Dadgrass. You go forward to Arizona.
Going forward to Arizona, you leap to 16-ish
Yes.
year old Sammy Fabelman, played by Gabriel LaBelle,
Mhm.
who's in The Predator, but I don't remember.
I don't either.
if he had a big role in that.
I don't think so.
That's like his only
He's
film credit.
Canadian. His father is like a Canadian character actor.
Sure.
He's got a handful of like TV credits, a couple little movie parts, but it was mostly like what's filming locally.
Yeah.
I think he's from Vancouver, I want to say.
He sure is.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of stuff films there. His dad is like
yep.
a jobbing
Yeah,
Vancouver
his dad's some character actor.
TV
right?
character
Yeah, yeah,
actor, and he would start, getting little parts and things.
He's quite good. The vibe in Arizona is happy,
Yes.
I would say, by
Yeah.
and large, right? It's
Especially once Benny's locked in. there.
exactly. The Benny is there. The
Yeah.
dad is an unqualified success. Like he's clearly like
He's killing it.
streets ahead on computers. Back when computers had doors. And
Streets
shit.
ahead.
Streets ahead.
Yeah.
One of the weirdest community jokes. Very
So
funny.
good. Yeah.
Very funny. He's got these sisters, Julia Butters. We love to see her.
Yeah.
Really fun.
This is the little girl from Once on Time in Hollywood, Ben.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
The child actor is playing the sister with the glasses.
Yeah, she's the oldest.
Who's one of these
sister.
people who are
Yes.
watching this movie are like, I guess she is going to be, she's going to be around forever, right?
She's fucking great.
I
love her.
thought these were all great kids' performances.
Yeah.
Which usually kids' performances they can really just stick out.
Well, and
like stick in your craw and just like kind of
feel
irk
a
you
little
over
As we move forward
make
to
your
throughout
teeth
the
hurt.
movie. Yeah.
some of the high school performances, I think they're two incredible standouts here. But all the kids are good, and they don't feel Spielberg kiddie.
And like some of the stuff with him, like when they're dressed up as the mummies and they're
Oh, well,
going like,
that's-
right. It's so cute.
That's when he's still a little boy, but it is
yeah,
that
that's
thing.
when he's a boy, right? I
You're
was trying to remember. There's a
you're
lot of these little
seeing
movies you see
the
him making.
problem
Right.
solving
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like,
yeah.
how do you do a tooth extraction? Candy corn, ketchup in the mouth,
Right,
the toilet paper rolls. All this stuff is cute, but also it's all cute, and you're like, is the whole movie going to be this? No, it's pretty much one montage
Yeah, exactly.
that shows him working out the math of like, how do you fake things on screen?
Right. And also just you getting the idea of like his sisters as these sort of willing participants
Yeah.
in his little experiments, right? You
Right.
know, in his little hobby.
And his mom sort of going like, oh, those kids.
Right.
And the dad being like, what is this thing?
I wish he would like do anything else. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, not being completely dismissive, but whatever.
No, it's this balance of him being like, there's scenes that I love so much where he's blown away by the ingenuity of the way he's able to
Exactly.
figure things out.
Right.
How did you create the bullet holes? I poked pins through the film
I
itself.
mean, that's the best. That's like their biggest moment of
right.
connection.
And he's like,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So when are you going to start applying that energy to math?
Yeah, do you want to go to MIT?
Right. Rather than saying like, my kid is clearly incredible at this thing.
Yes.
He's like, if he could just shift that ingenuity over to something that actually matters, that conversation of like, but when are you gonna like actually make something?
Yeah, because it's like, I feel like film school at that point
Yes.
is still a fairly new, like it's the 60s where that really becomes
Yes.
a concept that you could take a 4-year college program
Yeah.
to like in film. So like Cal Arts, NYU, these kinds of places,
UCLA,
Tisch, you know,
USC,
like
right.
they really start expanding in the 60s.
But it is
So like
those are
obviously
those-
though film
yeah.
is a long-standing thing,
Yeah.
it is a blue collar trade.
Yeah.
I feel like, and this is just the beginning of it more being like a professional class.
And his
right?
generation, Spielberg's generation, is the first generation to actually like come out of film school and have careers. Like it's Coppola and it's Lucas and it's Scorsese on the East Coast, you know?
Yeah.
They're the first guys to sort of get permission from their parents to actually pursue this and make something of themselves. Yeah, it feels like that's on actual job. That moment where Dano, I know we're jumping around a little bit, where Dano's like,
Let's just jump around. I don't remember
Yeah.
the exact progression.
well, this is the thing. At this point, it becomes hard to track it in order. But where Dano's like, when I was a kid, I used to look at things and try to figure out how they were made. Like I'd look at this car and this radio,
Yeah.
and I'd want to figure out how to make things.
Right.
And he's like, I make things. I make movies. I do the exact same thing you're talking
Yeah,
about. And he's like,
we have the same brain about this.
right. And then he's
Dad.
like, no, but like real things,
Yeah,
like
right.
things that people use.
because it's ephemeral, a film,
Right.
right? You know,
But it's that thing that's so heartbreaking where it's like he is a very sweet man. He loves his children dearly.
Yeah.
He is so caught up in his own worldview that he's just like, you need to think about things the same way I do because that has worked well for me. He cannot understand the kids shifting in their behavior a little bit. Like he's like, I used to look at this car. You should look at cars the way I look at cars and try to figure out how they're made.
it's funny because of course
It's so one-to-one.
the mom is
mind.
so different, right? And she's
Yes.
so encouraging of all this stuff. And you're like, so how did this marriage come about? But
Yeah.
obviously, it's like they're two Jewish people
Mhm.
in a time where like you're going to marry another Jewish person, and they do have this sort of yin yang thing of like they're good together.
Yeah.
You know,
They're-
fire and
they're,
ice.
like, good co-parents.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this the other day off mic, but like that thing for up until, for a long period of time, basically, if you wanted to date someone, you got married when you were 20.
If you wanted to live with someone, if you wanted
want
to
to
date them
sleep with
beyond
someone-
like going to
Right.
dinner with your parents or whatever,
Right.
sure,
Marriage
yeah.
was like a pretty quick step.
Yeah.
It was like day 3.
And then it's
maybe.
like now have 4 babies. And
Right.
it's like, oh, now you don't have a career. Like,
Right. And what's
you
almost
never
sort of
will.
more
Yeah.
astonishing is that you're like, they work better than you think they would for two people who probably got married 3 months after meeting each other.
It's a good question. I wonder if I can find out when they got married. Let's
Yeah,
find out.
look it up.
Because Spielberg is the oldest,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
The all the girls are younger than him.
Correct.
So Arnold Spielberg was born in 1917,
Okay.
and he married
Leah.
Leah in 1945.
Okay.
The war obviously sort of interrupted things, but
So
they
he's
were
28.
28. You know,
Okay.
So
Yeah.
but Arnold Spielberg was served in World War II.
Sure.
Did they allude to
And they lost a lot of family in the Holocaust, like
Sure.
Yeah.
other Spielbergs.
Do they allude to Dano's character being in the war?
They do, because
think
when
so.
he's
Yeah,
making
they
the war
mention it.
movie.
Because like the ham
Oh,
radio,
yeah.
Right.
He
There's the scene where I don't know if it's like the gym coach or whatever, when he screens the war movie and they're like, so that's based on your dad's memories, huh?
right,
Your dad's experiences in the war. And he's like, he doesn't really talk about it.
right, which I think obviously was a very common phenomenon.
Yeah.
For
But it
that's
does
not to
feel
talk
like,
about.
yes, it is invoked mostly through the prism of the war film.
Got it.
And him sort of asking his dad if the details are right, and people being like, "Oh, this must be your dad's story."
Mhm.
And it's clear that it's a lockbox kind of thing.
How about when during the shooting of the war film, he directs his actor?
Well, that sequence is so good.
And like
Because-
gets him to like really
but that's
feel
because
it.
I feel like you're saying, so much of what we're seeing when we're seeing him make movies
It's
is
technical.
the problem solving, right? But it's usually
Yes.
technical stuff, and it's so
Right.
clever to watch him do the
Yes.
thing, like poke the holes.
It's visual ingenuity.
But
It's sort of magic shit. Right.
That is like one of his earliest examples that he clearly remembers of me like interacting with an actor and getting him there. Like, you know.
And that he gets so worked up that he's feeling it when he's describing it to the guy. And when the guy, he's like trying to direct him, and the guy goes, well, like, what, you mean like acting? And it's like, right. Up until this point, everyone who's been in one of his movies is basically like, I am also a technician. My job is to stand in the place he tells me to stand.
Right.
My job
I'm a
is
little
not
action
to be
figure.
an emotional conduit for anything. And when the kid asks him that, you're like, is Spielberg going to make some snipey joke back at him? Like, yes, you're an actor. Be an actor in my movie.
Right.
And instead he's kind of taken aback and he's like, yeah, I guess, yes, that is what I want.
Right. It is a two-way thing.
The
Yeah,
kid's
yeah, yeah.
open to it. This big kid.
Yes, yeah. But
It's they both need to in real time figure out what is this actually.
But also, like, there is that vulnerability, right? Of like, this is the 50s or the early 60s. Like, you know, boys aren't supposed to be emotional. Like,
But
it's a
that's-
little tough
that's
for this
why
kid
I'm
to
like-
access it.
I
Yeah.
think this kid's. I'm watching the scene going, this kid's going to revolt. He's going to go, this is dorky.
I can't do
don't want to
this.
do this.
Right, yeah,
Instead, they're both like, acting, huh?
Yeah,
So what
right.
would you say to me next? And then I would like feel this.
And then, of course, the ultimate sort of gag is that the kid just can't. He keeps walking, right? He can't get out of the
and
scene. Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
Spielberg restraint. They don't cut back to the kid. You don't see a close up of him with tears down his face. You just end the scene on cut, and the kid's still walking off into the distance, and you realize like, oh, he just went somewhere.
I got to see this movie again.
This movie rips.
All right. So, what are some other things in this sort of middle period where it's like he's getting into this?
Yeah, I mean,
cinema?
he's figuring out that thing with the fucking wooden board in the desert where if they step on it, it looks like a gunshot went
Yes,
off. Like
yes,
all this shit
that
is
rules.
so good.
But like I'm trying to think of other like emotional,
Well,
like
so he's filming the war movie.
Yeah.
The mother dies.
which is
Michelle
the
Williams'
Robin
mother.
Bartlett
Yeah.
character, which is such a wrenching scene.
Yes.
It's quite upsetting. Like
Yes.
it's very well done without being too like sort of nasty or traumatic. Like it's just like sad. Yeah.
And there's been this step up of the equipment, right? He keeps on sort of getting his
Yeah, he's
father
getting
to-
better camera. He gets an editing bay, right? A little
Right.
baby thing,
Right.
right?
He's got
to
the little thing that's truly just the like the
snip,
clipper.
snip. Yeah.
The clipper with the glue. He's projecting it, you know. I mean, you have that one moment, it's another moment early on where you're like, is this going to be too Spielbergy? But the image in the hands when he's as a little kid, right? But what he doesn't have is basically like a moviola
Right.
where he can watch end cut.
Right. But he does eventually get
Well, it's at this point.
right.
Because it's the difference between just like basically having like the clipper. I'm using dumb terms here.
Whatever.
But you see him running the projector back and forth, then having to unspool it, hold it up to the light, try to figure out where the cut is versus this.
There is that Spielberg vibe also where he's like, listen up, kids. You know how fucking hard it was to do this
Yeah.
when I was a kid, you know?
And then having to like take the different sections, tape them, label the tape to the desk, all this shit I love. I mean, this was how I was like making fucking Super 8 films.
Oh boy. Mr. Spielberg over here.
All I'm saying is watching this, I was like, I gotta fucking dig this shit out of my closet and do this
I
again.
would fuck around with my uncle's digital camera, but I would
Yeah.
make movies I
Yeah.
would like do things in camera. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you'd like stop to edit it. Like
Yeah.
I had no idea how to video edit. I still don't.
No, I was doing like fucking physical editing like this.
I had a VHS tape, and me and my friends
like a
made
classic, like on the shoulder, big VHS
Yeah.
camera.
yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
and we made our own Jackass.
Oh,
You did what?
So
You
fun.
made a Jackass film, but those are dangerous.
What was it called?
Poison Potpourri Patrol.
Yeah, I think you may have mentioned this. You certainly mentioned it to me. I forget if you mentioned it on air.
I've been missing, like, or rather, I should
Yeah.
say, I've been trying to track down this tape for so long. It's like
Yeah.
one of my
You
old
can't find
friends.
If you do, we're gonna get a
We're-
VHS player.
yeah,
We're gonna screen it
absolutely.
on this
For
this
sure.
Yeah,
projector right here. Okay.
But so
Mm.
he asks for this new equipment. He tries to explain to his dad the importance of it. There's
Right.
sort of the argument with the mom of like, just support it. It's not that so much money. Because he says that he used. Oh, that's what Jeannie Berlin gives him some of the money.
Yeah.
Because it's like he bought extra reels of film. Jeannie Berlin forwards him the Hanukkah money. He says he needs this one thing.
And Jeannie Berlin, who is playing Bert's dad.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Bert's mom. Sorry, dad. I was
Yeah.
like, why did she seems to be like, she's the slightly more classy, judgmental,
Yes.
upper middle class.
Right.
She frowns on them using paper plates and paper utensils and all that, which I
Such
love.
a good character
She
detail.
complains about the brisket.
Early on in
It
the
doesn't
movie,
taste as good on a plastic fork.
early on in the movie, they sort of say like, well, they don't use the utensils. They use paper plates. They use disposable tablecloths because she's got piano hands. She doesn't want to damage her hands.
Right.
And as it goes on, it's just like
She resists domesticity. She doesn't want
Correct.
to be a domestic housewife.
It's like
that's
the
just not
thing
what
that
she's like. Yeah.
keeps her from fully committing to this is just like, well, I throw it all away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's collecting the scorpions. He's scourging together money. He makes the big plea to Dano. The family's fighting about whether or not to get him this editing thing, right? And then the dad buys him the thing.
Right.
They've gone on the camping trip. I'm sorry. The camping trip
yeah, well, the
happens
camping trip,
before the mom dies. So they go on the camping trip. He's filming everything obsessively. There's the moment where she's dancing in front of the fire and you can see through her dress. And the girls are so embarrassed.
They're so scandalized. Yes.
And they're like, why aren't you doing anything about this? Why are you filming it? And it's like, because this is good footage. What do you mean? This is.
It's the recurring theme in this film is this kid knows what looks good on camera.
He gets it. He sees
And
the moments
we will
you wanna
talk about the
capture.
confrontation with the bully later, which is sort of like a huge thing in the film. But it's the same kind of thing. He's like, look, man, I shoot things, they look good on camera. I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
Like, it is what it is.
It's truly it. Not like the kid is like destined for this, but this is what I'm talking about, him being a savant where he doesn't quite understand either how he does things well or why he is driven to do these things.
Right.
Now, so part of the dancing is also he's kind of in between
Yes.
the father and Benny.
Yes.
They're both watching her
Yes.
dance with a totally different context.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't know, there's just something about how that all plays out that just is, this microcosm of the bigger thing that's happening in the movie.
Right. So then the mom dies. The dad gets him the new Moviola editor.
Yeah.
And says, like, I got this for you. This is the favor you owe me. You have to cut together the footage from the camping trip.
Yeah. And obviously the mom is still in this great funk from her mother dying. And like the
She's
dad's
imagining
like this,
phone calls from her mother's ghost.
which is
right.
like also effective and kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about this
Mhm.
is two things. One, the fact that Sammy is like, what? I don't want to do that. Which is like so reminiscent to me of being a teenager where
Absolutely.
you would do these callous things.
Yes.
Even though it's so plain
You're such an
why the
asshole.
request is being made. And
Right.
you're like, yes, you're a stupid teenager, but still like he knows it's a normal thing for his dad. Like,
But
what an easy trade.
It's that weird thing of like teenagers are more sensitive and in so many ways more emotionally attuned than anyone else. But it's like their receptors are so sensitive that it hurts to acknowledge emotions.
Right.
Like you turn to this callous defense because you're just like, I'm so aware. I can read everyone now.
Yeah.
I can't block it out. Fuck you. I don't know. I'm not going to do this. And it goes
Right.
from being the pragmatic defense of like, well, I have like 10 kids.
I'm busy. Yeah. Right. Well, sure.
I can't delay the shoot a week. I
Right,
have
right,
to
right,
do it,
yeah.
this and that. And it's just like, you don't understand how important this is to your mother. And this is the shit I'm talking about where Dano, even though he has not been supporting the movie thing the whole time, even though he's like, when do you get over this? He's basically like, you making this is the one thing that would cheer your mother up. This weird power you have. And he's like, who cares? The movie camping trip. It's like, it will mean so much to her that you
Right.
did this.
He's right.
I just bought this for you. You have to fucking
And
cut
he's-
this footage.
He's not wrong.
Yes.
But at the same time, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm being like, why can't you talk to your wife?
Right.
You know, like it like where he's like, this is the only thing that's going to work. And I'm like, why is that the only thing that's going to work? Even though I'm kind of like, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, he likes the language, and it's also just that like cinema is this ecstatic expression.
No, it is,
expression.
and- but
It's things that are intangible.
But it's also like he's saying, it's the gift of like, I made this for you,
Yeah.
mom. Like, you know, that is, you love to get a little homemade
It's this captured
gift.
moment in time. That fucking camping trip is like one of the last moments of her life before the mother dies. It's capturing her in a purer state, a simpler state,
Mhm. And then obviously the big twist that we already sort of referenced, it's that like when Sammy's looking through the footage. what?
David, something humongous happens
Is
right before that.
Hirsch before this?
Hirsch shows
Yeah,
up.
right,
Hirsch shows up right after this conversation.
So it turns out that Mitzi's uncle,
Yes.
right? That's who he is.
Uh-huh.
Is a living Jewish lion, and he emerged. He's escaped from the circus.
She's gotten this phone call this imagined phone call from the ghost of her mother saying a man is going to show up. Don't let him in the house.
Yeah, right. Like this warning. Yeah.
Right. Dano picks up the phone and is like, "There's no one there."
And then he just arrives.
He arrives
in a cab, and he's Uncle.
Mitzi's freaking out. This is what was warned.
Boris, Uncle Boris.
We don't talk to him. He's been cast aside. Is there a reason why? Should I not let this man in the house? Is he a Dybbuk?
Did you notice the temperature symbol that arrived in the right corner of the screen? How it started getting hotter.
It's a fucking thermostat performance.
Yes, that's a very, very good point. Thank you for teeing him up there, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Uncle Boris worked in the circus, right?
Uh-huh.
And worked in the pictures.
He worked in the
like
movies.
silent pictures, right? Is sort of the idea.
The silent movies.
And he is a garrulous, hairy Jew.
Dirty showfolk. He is exactly what Dano is worried will happen
dismissive
to his
about,
son
right.
if he pursues this career.
And it's like he is this, but he's like Hollywood's past back when it really was
Right.
this like blue collar thing.
Yes.
And even below blue collar, right? It was
Yes.
like these like traveling sort of like entertainer thing, you
Right.
know, almost like a carny or whatever. Like, yeah.
But there's even that moment where he's like, I started working in movies in 1927. And he's like, 27, the jazz singer, first talkie. And he's like, I didn't work on that one. Like he doesn't have the credits that are just
No,
like,
he's right.
you made an impact.
Yeah. But he's like, art is within me. It's within your mother.
Yes.
And it's within you. And I see this.
Well, there's
he's not like, kid, you got to make movies. You got the gift. He's like, art is a tornado. Like he's terrifying.
Not that,
about
but he's
it.
like, you and I were addicts.
Yes. Yeah. Because
There was no kicking us off of this thing.
the whole thing in this movie is that Spielberg is saying like there has always been a camera between me and everybody.
Yep.
And like look, I just want it's the lead of my review, but it's the most important shot of the movie is later in the movie when they're announcing the divorce to the kids, he sees himself filming it
Yes.
in the mirror.
Yes.
Which is like, one of the most like kind of impressionistic things Spielberg has ever put on a film because it's not happening, but he's
Yes.
just like I know I'm filming. I'm thinking about how I would film this.
Yes. That's
And
what
then
it is. It's
here
that,
you are
Yes.
watching the movie. I did film it.
Yes.
60 years later.
well,
like,
we'll get to the other moment that fucking knocks me
Yes.
out.
Yeah.
But yes, no, Hirsch is like, he is this omen almost. He is like a ghost of Christmas yet to come, right? It's not like, I'm telling you, kid, you got the gift. You got to pursue this. There's the little bit of the like, your mother it'll break her heart if you don't. But it's more about because she gave this up.
Right.
And she's never going to be happy now. You need to avoid that. Basically, kid, here's your death sentence. You have no choice. You have the thing.
I see it in you. It's incurable.
Right. Your life might suck.
Yeah.
There's a really good chance your life might suck. And even if you find success in your field, it's probably going to come at the expense of your relationships and your family. But bad news. This is who you are.
Right.
Here's where it's going. He rips his shirt open, demands they sit Shiva.
The ripping the shirt open is so good.
The whole thing.
There is also just that thing that we've all had, I feel like, where it's like a relative or weird family friend comes over and it's like they're getting your room or they're sleeping on the couch or whatever. And you're just like, I don't like this. And it's like, well, too bad. Like it has to happen.
Yes.
You know that feeling as a teenager or as a kid where you're just like, this is like out of routine. This is troubling.
Look, I've long advocated for Oscars for all living Taxi cast members.
I mean, I think he got an applause break in my, it was a premiere screening. People are jazzed up, but right. He got a huge reaction.
Even the people who seem a little muted in their response to this film are like, obviously the Hirsch thing is a knockout.
It is.
Yeah.
I have a memory, like I know what you're talking about, David, and it's usually adults who are not good with kids.
Yeah, often.
They're
Right,
like
exactly.
they have no way of speaking to you like other adults
Which
do.
is, this guy
It's
is
just not in
not.
them.
Yes. Yes.
But there's also something so intriguing about that kind of adult too.
Yeah.
Right.
So then, at the behest of Judd Hirsch, who implores him, you have to do this. Why are you being selfish? Make the fucking camping movie, right?
Mhm.
He watches the footage and discovers the most devastating thing
Yes.
imaginable. It's like, it's exactly what Judd Hirsch just said, basically coming true. You have no choice but to do this. You cannot avoid this. By the way, it's going to break your fucking heart.
And it's so carefully presented
Mhm.
where it's like he's not seeing them like kiss.
No.
But he's just like over and over seeing them like be together.
Yeah.
And hold hands and chat and be emotional and being off to the side of things.
I'm sorry I keep on
It's so sensitive.
invoking this A.O. Scott interview, but like there's
No, whatever. It's
it
like kind of the
contains
big
so much
interview he
within it.
gave.
Yeah.
'Cause he doesn't give a lot of.
There was the Hollywood Reporter piece is really good too. But A.O. Scott was like, how much is that like a Hollywoodized, a clean narrative version of what happened? He's like, that is exactly what happened. And he's like, I find that fascinating because I feel like one of your greatest skill sets as a director has been being able to communicate a complicated story beat, emotional beat, character, piece of character development through a gesture, through emotion, not needing dialogue to explain things.
Yeah.
That you can have a subtle shift in physicality that's maybe not even at the center of the frame, completely change the temperature of the movie.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, it probably is because of that.
And,
It's probably because I fucking obsessively watched this footage trying to analyze the body language of what was happening in the background of a frame.
it's such a deep thing.
Yeah.
For him, clearly.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's very cool that he put it on screen for me to watch while eating some sort of like half stale popcorn.
So
It also is what it's like to be an editor. It really, I think, portrays the like obsessive having
Yeah.
to go back, the little tiny detail. Yeah, the
Same thing.
repetition.
Over,
Yes.
over and over again.
right, because you have that earlier
Boring. No thanks. Don't want
fun,
to do it.
fun. Like I find it very relaxing.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in a while.
Yeah.
You now go to the period where Sammy's a little shit, where he is so
puts down the camera.
yes,
Because he's like, toxic. This thing has only brought me misery.
right.
And I think that's why he becomes a little shit, because he's lost his cigarettes. He's
It's-
lost his crutch. Yeah.
It's like his only form of communication. It's only for himself.
And then obviously also, very understandably, he's completely consumed by this new perspective on his parents that he can't emotionally handle, which is a
Yeah.
very understandable reaction.
But this is basically when he starts talking in the movie. He's
Yeah.
had so little dialogue up until
it's
this
true.
point. It's like now that he doesn't have the camera and he's forced to actually engage with the world around him as a person, he does not like it. He is unhappy. And it's that thing that like everyone can tell in the family.
Yeah, that something's up with Sammy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so pointedly being directed at his mom and
Yes.
and then trickle down to Benny.
Is this
They
when
do the
she's-
premiere of the
yeah.
war movie.
Yes, which is awesome.
She
Right.
comes over, says, I'm so proud. He walks away. Benny comes over, is like, way to go, man.
Right.
Fucking walks
He
away.
gives Benny the coldest shoulders.
Right.
Yeah.
And then she says, I'm tired. Benny's going to drive me home. You guys continue celebrating. And he's just like, fucking insult to injury. They're
Right.
continuing to do. Now I'm clocking it in real time.
Right. And again, as I said, in this movie, when I'm watching it, I'm like, are they having an affair or not?
Especially
Like,
when they're going to the car together. I'm like, are they moving? Are they going to drive to like fucking Lover's Leap,
Right.
fuck in a car, and then he's going to drop her off?
but
like
of
some
course, the whole thing
disgusting-
is like, she doesn't even know she's doing it.
No.
She sort of knows.
Yeah.
Like, once confronted with it, of course she knows. But like, she doesn't know that she's doing it. She just wants to get the ride home with him because she prefers him.
It's the unspoken thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I truly do sympathize with her in so many ways, which is so
Yes.
crucial to the film. And the thing she says about how Bert kind of kills with kindness, where it's like he's so nice
Mhm.
and understanding that it's tough to be mad at him, which only makes you more frustrated with him.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a complicated set of emotions.
Absolutely.
Yes. He's not some easy villain, and she's not some easy villain.
No, absolutely not. But
It's all very interesting.
but for Sammy at this moment, she is the
Of course.
villain.
Right.
How dare you?
When does she slap him on the back? Is that when they're in California? Like, is that after the move?
No, that's still while
No,
they're in
that's before,
Arizona.
'cause
Yeah,
that's-
yeah.
They have the premiere.
Yeah.
Then she's serving breakfast. He's
Right.
being such a little shit.
He's like
doing
on the swim team or whatever. He's
the
shirtless.
the
yeah.
swim instructor test. Right.
Right, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
And
that's
he makes
'cause
some snide comment, and she like goes like, "Why are you continually being an asshole to me.
Right.
Like, she calls it out. He like storms off in a huff. He says something very
He
cutting
says
to
something
her.
mean. It's about the eggs as well. There's a whole thing with the
Right.
eggs. And she slaps him on the back and leaves a mark, which it just, again, feels like one of those things Spielberg has never forgot. Right? Like one of those sort of like
But it's also-
indelible.
she basically impulsively, as a knee jerk in response to what he says, goes to slap him in the face, and Spielberg turns away, and so the hand directly connects like in between his shoulder
Yeah.
blades. So it's also like this averted face
it's
slap
right. She didn't mean right.
that would
Yeah,
almost be worse, but yet there's this like big red mark on his back. She goes in to try to apologize to him, and he shows her the film footage.
Right. And it is as powerful for her as it is for him. Like it's a thunderbolt moment.
Also, just like, Mom, go sit in the closet.
Yeah.
Like, this is where I keep the trauma.
Yeah.
Now you have to walk in here, and now we have to share this. Yeah.
It's good.
She's really good in this moment.
She's
Yes,
really
she
good
is.
in
It's an
this
excellent performance.
movie.
It's a very big performance, and I think that put some people off. Like it's a very big performance.
I think this is who she really was as a person.
I agree. And also, right. Yeah. I think Spielberg cast her partly. I mean, she's a very talented actor, but like she kind of looks like his mom. Like when you look at his mom, she kind of looks like.
Let's
yeah.
acknowledge. Dano and Williams both feel like the waspier versions of his parents. He talked about needing to cast based on mood and based on the feeling they
Like the
evoked
look.
in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
previous
yeah.
work and whatever. Everyone else in the family, like, I mean, obviously, when you get to Hirsch and Jeannie Berlin and Rogan, even as like, you know, their
Yeah.
Jewish friend, and Gabriel LaBelle and everyone else reads more Jewish.
Yeah.
Armageddon Time is coming out right around the same time, where it's similarly like you're like Anthony Hopkins, Anne Hathaway, and Jeremy Strong are all doing strong New York Jewish dialects.
Well, no, not Hopkins.
Oh, right, because
Hopkins is English.
Yes.
No, he's the character's English because James Gray's grandfather was English.
Oh,
was
I
a
didn't-
Jew who immigrated to England.
Okay. When we
Um,
had talked about this, you
I was not
hadn't
sure about
dug
it, and
into whether. Yeah.
The difference I will say, like, I think I think the whole thing. Me and you are both Jewish.
And we talk about this a lot. It's not a thing where I'm like forbidden, but it is
I'm
a thing I
not
sometimes
either.
get touchy about. I'm probably touchy about because I do act to some degree, where I'm just
Yeah,
like,
sure.
in these movies that are explicitly Jewish texts about Jewish families that are written and directed by Jewish filmmakers, why are they so loath to actually put
Right.
Jews in these roles? And a lot of it is, unfortunately, fucking bankability, names, whatever.
The thing with Armageddon Time, especially, I feel like it's like that movie was made for very little money, and
needed to get-
he needs names, like,
Right.
and not just names that are available.
Right.
And this one is a little different because this is Steven Spielberg we're talking
Yeah.
about. He more has his pick of who he wants to cast.
But
and
I
it's not
think
Paul
he was
Dano
like, these
is-
are the two people who remind me of my parents the
he
most.
obviously cast the people he wanted to cast, and that's fine. Like my friend,
I can't
who
argue
I
with
will
either
not
of these
name-
performances. Yeah.
No, neither can I. I
Yeah.
think they're excellent performances. My friend will not name has this whole kind of like, these fucking Jewish boys can't even, they cast shiksas. They
Yeah.
can't acknowledge
Yes.
like their Jewishness
I-
to this day, you know, even they're making the Jewish
I
movie.
do think there's a little part of that, and I do think there is a deeply
In Armageddon Time,
ingrained-
I actually kind of meant like it in a meta way because it's like they're trying to assimilate, you know,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like, which I guess is sort of true. in
And
this
we were almost
movie,
even
too.
talking around this a little bit in the Eyes Wide Shut episode, but I do think there is this aspect of these guys where it's like there is anti-Semitism in our culture. The anti-Semitism maybe doesn't exist in the film industry in terms of the people you're interfacing with because the industry is very Jew heavy, right?
Yeah.
Disproportionately so to other industries in America. But I do think there is an ingrained anti-Semitism that when it comes to actually making the movies, you're like, people aren't going to like it if it's too Jewish, right?
No, I do think, yeah.
Even
look,
though
it's hard to
you have
reckon with.
Jewish studio heads and investors and producers and everyone working on the movie, they're like, but we obviously have to
You gotta-
take a
you
half
gotta
step
hide it. You don't
back.
want
There's
anyone
that
getting too
little
mad at you.
feeling of like the rejection from the audience.
Mm.
The one I always throw out that's the most galling to me is This Is Where I Leave You, and it's mostly galling because the movie's bad.
It's a bad movie.
But you're-
Directed by a Jew, right?
Directed by a Jew,
Yeah.
based on a book written by a Jew, and it's all about sitting Shiva,
Is
and
there
it's
any Jew in it?
Jane Fonda, Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, Adam Driver, who I give a pass to, but
Why
was
do you give him a pass?
because he's got the right neuroses.
He does, but so
I'm
does
saying-
Tina Fey. The
Tina
thing-
Fey, I think, is a little off.
She's Greek. It's the whole thing where this is my
Yeah.
counterpoint
Yes,
to when my Jewish friends get mad about quote unquote Jew face,
yes.
where I'm like, bitch. I say bitch, which is rude because
Yeah.
my friends are
But
nice
it's
people.
how you talk, and it really is how he talks, folks.
we've been getting away with playing Italians
This
for
is true.
years, playing, Mediterranean people
Right.
for years. Lord knows we got away with playing some other people we probably should have been playing. Like it's always been this kind of like, you're white or you're ethnic white,
Yes.
and I do think it's tough to shed some of that stuff. So I see Tina Fey playing a Jew. I'm like, she's Greek.
She's
She gets
funny.
it. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Right.
And maybe I shouldn't.
No, it's a weird
I never
balancing of
saw.
I mean, that movie's
This
just not
Is Where I
good.
Leave You,
And now he's making a Star Wars. But
no, he's not. I'm making a Star Wars.
I am too. That's so crazy. We haven't talked about
J.D.
this.
Dillard
yet.
just announced
Yeah.
in an interview,
Uh-huh.
he made this film Devotion. He was like,
Yeah.
sadly, I don't think my Star Wars project is going to happen. I'm like,
You don't
you
say.
had a Star Wars project?
Yes.
I never even heard about this.
No,
Yes.
everyone has had a Star Wars project.
Yes.
Ben also is now doing 2 Star Wars projects.
I'm really excited.
I think they're going to be good.
Yeah. I mean, Darth Stupid Idiot finally needs to grace the big screen.
He's wet as hell.
Alu Gash. Yeah.
Okay.
All this to say,
Yeah.
the thing Spielberg said was that the main performance that convinced him to cast Michelle Williams is Gwen Verdon, which makes a lot of sense.
Totally. He mentioned Blue Valentine as sort of like, that's my favorite Michelle Williams performance, but he said,
That's when she really
when I saw
registers for me,
Fosse
the
Verdon-
emotional depths, the technical skill of this person. But
I
Fosse
was-
Verdon, he was like, that's kind of my mother.
but Fosse Verdon, he was right. He was like, I had never seen her do something so transformative or whatever.
But also the hyper fragile consummate performer. This person who is like a ball of light and energy, but also it's all on the surface. Bruises so easily. But yeah, so they have this devastating confrontation.
They do, yes, with his mother, yes, and then shortly thereafter they have to move to California, right?
He gets a new job.
Yeah. And it's the same thing where she's like, you better bring Benny, and he's like, I can't. Like,
Right.
this is, and it's the new job is IBM, right? He's like, he's
Yes.
made it to the top of the
correct.
mountain,
And
right?
he's like, I have already taken Benny further than he would have gotten on his own.
Exactly, and it's like I cannot, essentially put myself on the line right away here. And be like, you have to hire my best friend, like
Right. And she's like, it will break my heart.
But this is the thing; it does feel like he can do it, and he's like, unconsciously, he's like, no more. Like,
this is
right.
right.
And it just feels like everything's like splitting at the seams.
Yes.
A little bit. Everyone is finally like, we need to speak the unspoken things.
Yes.
A little bit.
Sammy Fabelman goes to trade in his old camera. Uncle Benny is there. At the counter.
Yes. One of these scenes that really gets to me because like I have this thing in a movie where I'm like, when someone gets something,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I bought you this thing, and the kid declines it because it's like an emotional
Yes.
moment in the movie. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, come on, man, that cost that guy money. Like,
I know.
don't you have? It's sort of like the same thing as I always say, where people don't eat the food.
Yes.
I'm like, guys, don't waste it. Like, take the
Well,
camera.
Look, there's something so sweet to the fact that Rogan is doing this, right?
It's very sweet. But it initially, you understand Sammy's thing of like, you're trying to buy me off. You're trying to be the fun dad you've always been. And now I see through you and I don't want it. And the whole speech Benny has where he's like, it's going to break your mother's heart if you don't make movies anymore.
Yeah, and I think he also understands that like he's been a balance between the two parents.
Yeah.
And if they move away, his mother is going to be a mess. And his dad's probably going to win the argument that you shouldn't make the movies anymore.
Right.
Right? And you already seem to be doing that. Maybe I don't totally understand why, although I imagine Michelle Williams has communicated the thing about the film to him. Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
If she had. I
But
don't think she ever did.
He clearly knows that Sammy has picked up on at least the vibe.
Right.
And what starts to feel like, is this a buy-off thing, becomes like, I am actually doing this out of the genuineness of my heart. And to convince you of that, I will own up to you hating me.
Right.
Like he basically says, I understand why you hate me, and it is fine.
Right.
I get it.
The thing I thought.
Remove this item from that equation.
Right,
You
right,
need
right,
to
right.
have this, and you need to keep doing this. Turn me into the enemy. That is okay.
And the thing I figured was going to happen was that he would eventually end up moving with him, but he doesn't.
No.
Like when she when she leaves him and gets with him, she's leaving. She goes back to Arizona.
She goes back. Yeah.
And I sympathize with her in so many ways.
Mhm.
One, that she's sort of this constrained person. It's so difficult to just like do the housewife thing.
Yeah.
We just made every woman do the housewife thing. Here, have 4 kids. Like,
And we didn't talk about
the piano scene.
Right, with
Yeah.
the nails.
That's when they're still in Arizona, right?
yeah. That's
That
the
scene is really, really gutting.
Yeah.
And it's played for laughs.
Well, because at first when you're hearing the nails tapping, I'm like, oh, that's such a good Spielberg memory detail.
Little detail.
And then
right,
you're like,
that he
oh no,
can't forget.
the whole scene's about the nails.
Yes. To explain, she's giving this recital. She's got these beautiful long
She's practicing
nails.
she's going to perform on television.
Yeah.
She's got these giant long red nails.
Mhm.
And they're like, it sounds like a typewriter. You cannot go on TV with these. No one will hear you playing. And of course, Dano's response is like, well, especially with the mics they have. Like he like explains
He's like, you
on
don't
technical
understand
level.
these days. Yeah.
And
And so
they,
they clip her nails kind of against her will.
Yes.
In this way where she's laughing the whole time, but you're also like, Jesus, I don't know. Like there's something weird about it. There's something kind of sexy about it.
And they're both
Because
like holding her
Seth
down.
Rogen's holding her. Yeah.
And then after they do the first one, she's like, that's enough of that. I'll go in and do the rest myself.
Yes.
Like it then becomes.
Yeah. And it's just one of those, like encapsulations of like, she could be with the joke, could be kind of like really up and
Right.
manic, and then suddenly kind of like completely out of it. And
But
you know,
also
it's
this
hard to read
complicated
her
thing
moods.
of like, are they suppressing her like spirit? Why are they making her conform to having normal sized nails? And it's like, because you want to play music.
She
It's
needs
not
to
like
cut
we're
her
trying to
fucking
force
nails,
you to become.
But
yeah.
there is that feeling of
Of
like they're
course.
putting her in a cage.
Yes.
And like, then of course, like when she arrives home in California with a monkey on her shoulder, which is apparently a real thing Steven Spielberg's mother
Absolutely.
did.
Yeah.
She's like, I wanted to laugh. And it's like one of these things where you're like,
Heartbreaking.
yes, it's fucking heartbreaking.
And she names the monkey Benny.
Yes.
And everyone's like, well, now you've put too fine a point on it.
A little bit.
Now you've said the thing that you can't unsay.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, the California thing, I feel for her on that front.
Mhm.
And I feel for her and the entire, all the kids, as someone who has moved across the country, to another country, across the ocean,
Mhm.
when I was 9 years old.
Mhm.
It
David's
sucks.
staring me down.
It sucks.
Sure.
You never did a big move. You were never
No.
right.
No.
you know-
We moved from the 7th floor to the 11th floor in the same building.
Were you crying
year.
and like being dragged up the stairs?
Yeah.
Your nails digging into the carpet.
Absolutely.
And like fucking Spielberg's character's like, 16 at this point, 17. Like,
mhm.
like it's brutal to
Yes.
uproot yourself.
Yes.
It just feels like, I knew again his parents got divorced,
Mhm.
but it feels like the end.
Yeah.
And when they see that house, that like cool modernist house that they're going to live
Yeah.
in, but they never do live in, right? They never do live in it.
Well, this is the later move. This is when he gets the promotion. And then
Right.
the divorce happens. First, they move into the house where they keep on saying like it's a rental, it's temporary.
And it is this kind of weird haunted house.
We're
Like,
never
it
going to
feels
pack it
wrong.
up. Right. The modernist house. By the time he finally shows them the modernist house that they're moving into, the marriage is over. The next scene after the home video footage of the home film footage of the modernist house is the divorce announcement.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, the modernist house feels like him trying to save it in like one last way.
Right. And it's this thing where he keeps on saying, like, do you not understand? I'm working to get us a better life. I'm moving up in the company. This is all going so well. And they're like, no amount of money is going to make her happy.
And meanwhile, she's getting a monkey. Like she's going more chaotic.
Yes.
Like she's going the opposite direction of him.
They finally get her to agree to go into therapy.
When they divorce, we should mention that we can talk briefly about Sammy gets a Christian girlfriend, and it's very funny.
Not briefly. We can talk about this a lot. We can talk about this
How
and the
long have we
bully
been
a
running?
lot.
2 hours.
Yeah.
I think.
But it's sort of like the divorce. The divorce conversation. I already mentioned it. It feels mundane, and it feels like the divorce conversation we've seen. The classic, like we're sitting the kids down. This is not your fault. This is what's
How
happening.
dare you do this to us? Who's the bad guy? Let's find the victim.
And it's
the
just
culprit.
the
Yeah.
crucial thing is obviously
We
just
all want to
that.
find the guy who did this.
We all want to find the guy who did this, but it's just the crucial thing is just that shot of
Yes.
him
Him in the mirror.
reflected in the
Being
mirror.
like, this would be
That's
such a good
incredible.
scene in a movie someday.
Right.
But
Yeah.
goes to high school, experiencing anti-Semitism for the first time. in his
Yes, he's got this sort of big strapping Aryan bully.
life. Yes.
Who is that? The one that's played by Oaks Fegley?
No, Oaks Fegley's the other one.
Oaks Fegley is Chad, who's kind of the psycho.
The greaser psycho.
Yeah, right? Like the
Yeah.
kid with anger issues.
Yes.
I guess is the best way to put it.
Right.
Logan, who's played by Sam Reckner. That's
His first performance.
He's very, very good in one specific scene, especially. Yes.
My favorite scene.
Because initially, I agree.
And
Initially,
was the scene that finally brought me to tears. And I would not have expected from the outside looking in that would be the scene that broke me. I was like
I get it though.
through
I
a lot
get
of this
it.
movie, and
Sure.
that scene just knocked me out. We will talk about it in a moment.
Because like before then they are a little bit generic brand bullies. Not that I know Steven Spielberg is dealing with, like, he was bullied at school.
Yes,
But you know what I mean? They
Yes.
feel like, it feels like we're watching an old movie.
it's movie bully. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like
Or in one of these California high schools where everyone's outside all the time.
right,
you
Blackbird
know,
Jungle or whatever.
they're
right.
like, meet me outside, kid. You
Yeah.
know, they're punching him
Yes.
in the stomach, all that shit.
Absolutely. But here's this Aryan boy who the sort of Weasley greaser kid uses as like muscle to enforce his anger.
Right.
And as much as they all, like, sadistic, sociopathic teenage boys do enjoy the sport of picking this kid's vulnerable spot, which is of course his Judaism.
Yeah.
It feels like Oakes-Fegley is the only one who is genuinely maybe driven by a pure anti-Semitic hate. Right? The rest of them are kind of going along with the fun of showing dominance.
The bullies are who they are, but then he does get a girlfriend, Ben. He kind of has a crush on Logan's girlfriend, I feel like, right?
Correct.
She's the one who's initially nice to him.
Yes.
But then it is her more overtly religious friend who is then drawn to him as this like exotic forbidden fruit.
Well, the reason why he ends up then meeting and getting this girlfriend, it's because he says like, oh, I saw him making out with the redhead.
Yeah, he genuinely sees Logan cheating on his girlfriend, high school girlfriend, making out with someone else. And then Logan is like, you cannot like have said that. You must reverse your opinion. You must you just tell her I made it up.
They gang up on him in volleyball, a scene I found pretty triggering. And then he sees him making out. He sort of can't look away in his forever observer role.
Yeah, right.
But then he accidentally slips, make a noise, is caught. They're ganging up on him outside. He's got the one trump card, which is, I can fucking call this out.
Right.
And then she calls out this actress who, by the way, was in Licorice Pizza.
Oh, was she?
She plays the girl that I feel like Cooper Hoffman has a crush on, and then Skylar Gisondo comes in and starts like flirting with her instead.
Sure.
She's one of the other child actors in the movie, right? Then she is in this, and just today I saw paparazzi photos from the beginning of filming on Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. She's in that as well.
Well,
Fucking first
she's
three
quite good.
movies are Paul Thomas Anderson, Steven Spielberg, and Francis Ford Coppola.
right. I mean,
What's her name?
I don't know. Let's see.
This is Logan's girlfriend.
I know, but what's
redhead one.
what's her name?
Or the lighter redhead one. Yeah.
Is she Chloe East?
Yes. No, Chloe East is
Chloe
the one
East
he
is the
ends up dating.
girlfriend. Is the Christian girlfriend?
Yes.
Yes, she is. Who's been on like an ABC Family show or whatever.
And I looked her up. She has like YouTube videos from when she was like 12 of like how to redecorate your room that have like 1 million views. She
Cool.
was one of these weird fucking YouTube kids.
Isabel Kusman or
Yes,
Kussman
right.
is
She's
the
one who's
is
sort
Claudia,
of starting her
who's-
career
yeah, with a bang.
with a bang.
Bang bang.
But yes, he gets knocked out, but she can tell, well, you knew that the girl was a redhead. I knew which girl that was. That's the one he keeps on cheating on me with. You knew something.
Yeah.
They make him go apologize, say he was lying, and she's like, but you knew.
Right.
Is it true that you're Jewish?
Right.
And then they're both sort of fascinated by him as a novelty. This girl's obsessed with Jesus.
She is. She's raised by a religious family.
But she also like is obsessed with Jesus as a heartthrob status.
She thinks he's hot.
It's like teen beat,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
pinups.
That's
got her
how
with
that's how
Jesus.
she has gotten into being
Ricky
religious.
Nelson,
Yes.
Jesus.
He's hot.
Yes.
Look, Jesus is often presented as a hottie.
And I like when he's like, we don't know what Jesus looked like. And she's like, no, he looked like this. He looked like this handsome man. You kind of look like him. You're Jewish too.
Yes.
You're like, at first I'm like, does she like him because it feels like an act of rebellion to date a Jewish boy?
Right.
And there's probably a little bit of that, but there's even more of the like, well, Jesus was Jewish.
Right.
If I'm going to find my Jesus, he can't already be a Christian.
But yeah, he's the freaking, he's the forbidden fruit. I don't know how else to describe it.
I think
right?
he's so insane. She is so insanely good.
She's really funny.
It feels very similar to the Amy Adams performance in Catch Me If You Can.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
in a real good way, in a sort of statement way. Like, oh, this is someone who we might be following for years and years to come as an actor.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And so then later there's the fight at the dinner table.
Right. Jeannie Berlin comes back over. The girlfriend's invited over for dinner. They're fighting about the monkey and everything else.
Right.
They're asking why he stopped filming stuff.
Right.
The mom calls out that he still sleeps with the camera under his pillow.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if he's abandoned it, like it's his real love.
And she's like, why aren't you filming this? There's the senior ditch day. You should film that. They're looking for photographers. This is the thing. And the girlfriend mentions that her dad has the Aeroflex camera.
Right.
The 35 millimeter.
Or I think it's 16, but it's like a big step up.
Right.
Yes. And it's like, this kid has been like disavowing film and filmmaking.
Because he sees it as this like poisonous thing.
Right. And the second she says, like, he's got a thing, it's called like an R, and it's like the Airflex. He knows everything about it. And he starts like naming the technical stats of it.
Right. It's cool.
Jeannie Berlin will give him the money for the film reels. They convince the dad to rent the editing equipment, like sort of against his will.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's back on it.
And then he shoots Ditch Day at the beach, which is like a classic. It looks so classic, like California.
Very 60s surf movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this is the important thing. He shows it at prom.
But let's also say, when they hook up, when he goes over to her house, let's pray, whatever, you're like, is this something where they're going to hook up one time and then she's going to be embarrassed by him and like pretend to not know him the next day?
No, she likes him.
She comes over for dinner where they go to ditch date. They're like together the whole time. Like, you're like, fuck, he's actually got a girlfriend.
But then when he says he loves her, she freaks out justifiably.
But this is the big.
I just like that she's just like, wait a second, buddy.
Yeah.
like she's not like, no, I love you too. Like she's like,
I guess
this
maybe
is kind of a sex thing.
Having seen too many movies, I was like, is this going to be a thing where the next scene she goes like, I mean, I can't date a Jew.
I don't know you. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And
No,
instead,
she
it's
dates
like,
him.
no, they are together.
Yeah.
As you said, it's sort of a more like having fun thing, forbidden fruit kind of thing. But they're together. They go to this dance.
They go to the dance. He shows.
Well, no, first he says, you ever think about coming to LA with me?
Yeah.
She's like, aren't you going to college? He's like, I want to go to LA. I want to like.
He wants to be a movie boy.
I want to be doing the movie thing. Why don't you come out with me? She's like, I got into another school. What are you talking about?
She's got a fucking life to live.
What are you trying to
Leave her
say?
alone, Sammy.
And he's like, I love you.
He's all mixed up because of the divorce, obviously.
Right.
You know,
and
he's
she's like,
deep in that.
what are you talking about? And he's like, look, my parents are getting divorced. And she's like, wait, what? And at first, my thought was she's rejecting him because she comes from such a religious background.
Right.
The
She
idea that
can't associate
divorce
with
is
someone from a
happening.
broken home.
And instead, she's just like, oh, I'm reading you. I understand what's going on here.
She gets it.
You're overcompensating. This doesn't even have anything to do with me, really.
She's smart.
Then Principal James Urbaniak comes up.
He sure does.
And is like, time to screen the movie.
Hey, come on, kid.
Yeah. Film to screen here.
I've got some horn-rimmed glasses on.
Yes, I brought them myself from set. You paid me $100. James Urbaniak will someday be a guest on the show.
We need to have him on. He shows this movie.
But he's like dreading it.
This is actually getting funny how every time I try and tee it up,
because this is the most important scene in the movie. He's fucking dreading it. And you're like, is he just so bruised by the rejection?
/ did he phone this in? Is he not like, is this, has he not found it again?
He basically says, please don't make me do this.
Right.
He spools it up. The thing is incredible. It's like a perfect Annette Funicello beach blanket bingo movie.
And you see all the stuff paying off because there's like little clips when they're at the beach of like dropping like yogurt, ice cream on people's faces.
Where you're like, what is this?
Yeah,
right.
what is this going to be?
And you're like,
and
oh, he actually like staged
He lands some gags.
Yeah.
Everyone's laughing.
And anytime they cut to someone in the beatlands, they'll like stand up in the audience. Their friends will pat him on the back.
Right.
It's like he's making everyone feel
right.
good.
He did a good job to like include everyone, but Logan is the hero of his movie.
Right.
And he's hot as fuck. He's like this sort of like strapping,
golden
like glowing movie
guy.
star.
And he's like filming him running on the beach in slow motion.
Yeah.
He's making Oaks Fegley look like a fucking dunce.
yeah. He is pretty brutal to Oaks
Blankets
Fegley,
being pulled out from under him, whatever, the beach blanket. But he's making Logan look so goddamn good, right?
Right.
Then there's this incredible Spielberg one. You talk about the skill of Spielberg. If you can distill what is his superpower into one thing, it's like his fucking blocking, right?
Right.
I love Nope. It is one of my favorite movies of the year. But Nick Lariano, former co-researcher on the show, had a tweet thread about it where he was talking about like in Nope, Peele is trying to do the Spielberg oneers.
Yep.
And he does them better than most people do.
Yeah.
But the magic of what Spielberg's able to do, which no one else can do if you watch something like Jaws, is that he will have the oneer that will go on for so long, that will start as one shot, morph into another shot, morph into another shot. And at every single moment, the composition is perfect. Even when people are crossing frame and rearranging and the camera's shifting and the plane is shifting, somehow, even in the transitional stages where it's morphing, it's always perfect and is communicating the story. There's never any sloppiness. And this is one of those sequences where there's the shot where it's like the movie stops. The redhead girl runs up to Logan and is like, Logan, you looked really good in that, right? Is talking to him. You're like, okay, the girlfriend is now going to come up furious that he's talking to the redhead girl.
Right.
Instead, she pushes the redhead girl away and just starts kissing Logan because she is so fucking horned up by the magic of the movies, right?
Yep.
Then we follow Christian girlfriend as she loops around behind them, goes over the projector to look for Sammy, and Sammy's gone. And even though she just was like, Sammy, lose my fucking number, now she's kind of horned up for Sammy. And where is Sammy? It's just this shot that transforms 4 times in the wake of how everyone's perception has changed of everyone else post this movie screening. And Sammy is the one person nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And he is sitting in a fetal position, hunched in the hallway by the lockers. And Logan comes over and he is fucking irate.
Yep. Why did you do that?
Why did you do that?
Why would you do that?
What are you talking about?
And it's not what I love about this scene.
It is so complicated.
It's not at all simple what he even means. And he doesn't even totally know what he's asking.
No.
But it's this combination of why did you make me the hero of your movie when I've been so cruel to you?
Is this some incredibly perverse thing? Like, there has to be some ultimate Carrie-style bucket of blood dropped on my head.
Yeah.
You couldn't set me up.
Right. Like, what's the turn here? Like,
when does the shoe drop? Right. And he says the thing where he's like, what do you say? Like, she just kissed me.
Yeah.
She's right now nicer to me than she's ever been before. She idolizes me more than she ever has before. And I'm even meaner to her than I am to you. And Sammy has that incredible line where he's just like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And it's like, why did you do this? And he's like, I don't know. Maybe I wanted you to be nice to me for 20 seconds.
Right.
Maybe I just thought it would make for a better movie. Right. I don't know.
I mean, the other, there is a homoerotic edge to it that sort of distressed him, right? Like, why did you make me look so beautiful?
Right.
You know, like.
But it's the same part of him that's just like, it's a good image. I don't care if it's my mom
it's a good
or
image,
it's my
but he's also like, you're
popping.
Yeah. You're fucking a movie star, buddy.
You're the only one who are a star potential.
You know, I looked around, I filmed a lot of stuff, and I'm sorry. You made the cut. You're number one. You've got it, and I can't help but make you look good.
It sucked.
Right. I don't know why I did it either, but I fucking did it because guess what? Everyone there was eating out of the palm of my hand.
He's angry at himself.
Yes,
he's
which
like,
is so funny.
I wish there was some trick. I wish there was a justification. I chose the best footage.
It's like so good,
but also not a conscious decision. Once again, he's just like, I don't fucking know.
But it does feel like Spielberg to this day, like looking at the sky and being like, "These gifts, I'm a monster."
Right.
You know, like it's a little bit of
truly,
that. Yes,
because he's scared.
I can't help myself.
He's scared by himself doing that. And he has that speech where he's like, I run faster than anyone in the state. I work really hard for that. And I look at that guy up on the screen and I don't run as fast as he does.
Right. You've turned me into something I'm not. Like
You've turned me into something I can never live up to.
Right. Yeah.
Which is this fucking power of the movies thing. It's like, you've created some static truth that I now, has always felt so fucking confident in myself.
Yeah.
I will now feel inferior for the rest of my life because I can't live up to the fake version of me that you created.
Right.
And I don't understand why you would do that to me. And he like breaks down crying.
It rules. It's a very, very good scene. And it is kind of the crux of the movie, right?
Chills.
Yeah.
Chills. And he goes like, you better never, ever fucking tell anyone that this happened.
It's so good. And he was like, I won't unless I make a movie about it.
And then you're watching that fucking movie now.
Yes.
And then he goes, oh, I won't. Why would I ever make that movie? Who would want to watch that?
I make a movie about it. Maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 years, An
incredible joke, and yet somehow...
The biggest laugh the movie got, I would say, in my audience.
Yet somehow there is arguably still a greater meta joke coming. David,
Yes.
you still look so stressed out
Yes.
trying to figure
Well, I
out
am.
what to get the boss baby for the holidays. And guess what? The answer is simple. Bombas.
Yep, Bombas is good.
Gifting is hard. Bombas makes it easy with socks, underwear, and t-shirts that feel good and do good.
Yeah, they feel good because they're thoughtfully designed with the softest materials, and they do good because for every item you purchase, Bombas donates another to someone in need.
Now, David, I have converted most of my sock drawer to Bombas. I love my Bombas, as you know.
Me too. All
But-
Bombas.
The first Bombas I ever bought when they started advertising on the show was their Sesame Street line. And I know that the boss baby is now very into Sesame
She
Street.
does like Sesame Street. I wonder if, I
That
wonder if
might
she'd
be
care.
a good present.
Yeah, sure. Well, Bombas socks, underwear, t-shirts, and slippers are cozy upgrades to everyday basics and the perfect gift for everyone on your list, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
They use materials like Pima cotton, premium Pima cotton, ultra soft, never itchy merino wool in their socks and t-shirts, and fuzzy Sherpa lining in their slippers. Ooh, do I need
Ooh.
Bombas slippers?
Yes.
They've gotten a holiday collection.
Ho,
okay,
ho, ho.
putting a
Merry
twist
Bombas.
on traditional festive colors and designs. You got purples and greens, geometric snowflakes, sweater textures, retro ski patterns.
Also ends with an AS, so it also works.
Yeah. And did you know socks, underwear, and t-shirts are the 3 most requested clothing items in homeless shelters? That's why Bombas donates 1 item for every item you buy.
David, I did in fact know that. And did you know that Bombas is the most successful company in the history of Shark Tank?
Yes, and I love to hear it. So far, they've donated over
The light in your
75
eyes.
million items of clothing.
Uh-huh.
That's a whole lot of comfort, a whole lot of good. So give the good this holiday season with Bombas. Go to bombas.com/check and use code check for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/check and code check for 20% off. Bombas.com/check, code check. It's really like right after this is really just like
Here's the final scene with the mother,
what is the final scene with her?
where they're in the kitchen,
Yes,
and
which
he's
is a
like,
great scene.
so
Right.
she dumped me.
Yeah.
And she's like, why? And he's like, because I asked her to marry me.
she's
And she
like,
goes, really? And he goes, all but. Which
right.
it's so funny that like even just 12 hours later, he recognizes saying I love you was way too intense.
Yes. Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
basically was saying to her, marry me.
Right. Yeah.
Even though I
Exactly.
don't think he literally thought he was saying that in that moment.
Right. For sure.
And they have the courage. She like is like, I need to apologize for the slap.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, the Chris Rock thing, that won't happen for another 50 years. And she's like, no, the time I slapped you.
Thumbs down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
But they have this final, like, all of my tension with you is probably because I see too much of myself in you.
Right.
And her basically apologizing that he had to be burdened with knowing this whole thing, being stuck in the middle of this dynamic, all of this.
Right.
It's a heartbreaking scene.
It is.
It's the scene that should win Michelle Williams her supporting actress nomination,
Yeah.
an award that she will instead probably lose to Michelle Yeoh or Kate Blanchett.
I would say she's gonna be runner up to. I don't know who Kate Blanchett is. Lydia Tarr will be winning the Oscar
Oh,
for
sure,
playing herself
sure.
in the film Tar.
I think Michelle Yeoh could win. I think it could go either way. David's shaking
Not
his
a
head.
No, I don't think so. But I do think she'll get a nomination. Or I'm very hopeful she'll get a nomination.
Sure.
After that
She
is
would
kind of the
probably
movie's
wins supporting
like
in Cakewalk though.
Michelle. You know,
Yes.
there you are. Like,
But I would argue
because
it's
like a lot
category
of the
fraud.
Sammy stuff in this
Sure.
movie is with his
kind of like she's
parents.
got, partly because the
and
category
this is like Sammy alone. I don't think it's like a little bit more. I think there, at the very least, I will say, I think there's legitimate cases for either. I also hate the term category fraud.
Well, I think you're a category fraud.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
it just makes it sound like some crime, and I'm like, guys, let's all relax.
It's a crime of art.
Uh,
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. There are no crimes in art.
exactly.
Frank told me that.
So we're jumping ahead a little bit to this like slightly sadder apartment the dad lives in.
1 year
now.
later.
It's kind of single guy apartment.
Freshman year of college.
Sammy is bad at college.
He keeps on coming home and staying with his dad in the apartment rather than staying in the dorm because his roommate's driving him crazy.
And
A
he-
real I want to drop out of college move.
right.
Yes.
And he you know
He's having a panic attack. He thinks he's having a heart attack. But his dad, sort of like the doctor, puts his head to his chest and is like,
you're all right.
this is a panic attack. Your mother has them. You're fine.
But the dad doesn't want to see the pictures though. That's what I remember.
Well,
Right? Like
he-
that's right. Is that the same
They
scene?
get the letter from the
Yeah,
mom.
right, from the
and
mom.
she's like, it's weird. It's just random pictures of some backyard party.
right.
And then the dad looks at the one and like turns away.
And it's Seth Rogen is like grilling or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's the thing I remembered, honestly. It's just like, as much as Dano is being a mensch about the whole thing,
Yes.
he is so heartbroken,
Yes.
right? Like he can't really handle it.
He tries to give his son the ultimate gift, which is
$100 to spend on whatever he wants.
people think more money is a greater gift.
No.
It isn't. 100 is the best gift you could
And it
ever
can
give.
buy you love.
It can.
Yeah.
It can.
101 can't.
Nope. No, he says like basically he gives in the Rogan speech. He's like, you have to do this. I can't stop you from doing this. Right? You should go. You should pursue this.
Right.
But he, even when he's trying to free his son from the burden of the expectations, there's the final knife jab where he goes, maybe it's my fault. Maybe I should have stomped this out while you were young and I still had the chance, but now it's too late.
Sure.
It's heartbreaking.
It's sort of
And
an
he's like,
anti-endorsement.
but you love
of
this.
him.
You're very good at this.
You should
I
do
can't
it,
stop
but
you.
also, oh boy, I wish you didn't want to. Yeah.
Well, he's like, it's my fault. At this point,
right.
I have to own the mistake that I didn't stop you from pursuing this stupid thing while I could.
And there's this
still could.
weird line where Sammy replies with like, I'll show you. I'll make a movie about a dinosaur theme park and then you'll love me.
Yeah.
I thought that line was a little on the nose.
little on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I'll show you. I'm going to make a whole company where there's a boy and a moon fishing for films, for dreams.
David, the fucking logo at the beginning of this movie,
What is the logo?
Universal logo.
Yeah.
And then E.T. starts riding in front of the Universal globe.
Yes. It turns into Amblin. Yes.
Right.
This is the new thing.
This is Spielberg's first Universal movie in 10 years.
Is that true?
He was,
Should we go through them?
because he was obviously predominantly a Universal guy, then DreamWorks, but DreamWorks and Universal did a lot of stuff together.
Yes, his last Universal film, was Munich, and that was like Universal DreamWorks.
Yes.
So that doesn't even, like his last like full Universal film was The Lost World, Jurassic Park.
Right.
Okay.
It just even the DreamWorks relationship with Universal, he was still sort of in bed with them. And then then DreamWorks went over to Disney.
It's
and then he's been free agenting around. He did 2 Foxes. He did a Warner Brothers.
Ready Player One was Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Post and West Side Story were Fox. BFG
Lincoln,
was
BFG,
Disney.
Bridge of Spies were all Disney.
Lincoln and Bridge of Spies were Fox, weren't they? Or maybe not. Were they Disney?
No, they were Touchstone.
They were
DreamWorks.
Touchstone. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anyway, yeah.
Touchstone became the DreamWorks label for
like
6
Tintin
years.
was a weird like Paramount Sony
Nickelodeon.
thing? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Sony was international.
This just that logo felt like Universal being like, he's back,
we
baby.
got him, bitch.
We got him.
He does not like Warner Brothers anymore.
No, and
That's
it felt
for sure.
very similar to Universal rolling out the red carpet for Nolan, being like, we now want to be the most director-friendly studio.
100%. Right. Yeah. Come to us.
Anyway.
Okay, so the final scene of the film. Look, I knew that David Lynch was in this film playing John Ford.
Yes.
I was aware of this.
Yes.
His casting had been announced, and then I'd heard the sort of scuttlebutt of like, do you know who he's playing? John Ford.
Now, had you heard the
Yes.
John Ford story before?
I had heard
Yes,
the
he
John
tells
Ford
it in a lot
story
of
before,
interviews.
but I couldn't remember it exactly. I just
Sure.
remember that it was John Ford being like, look at that painting, like I remembered that.
I believe I invoked it in the Warhorse episode.
You've invoked it at some point,
Right.
and I can't remember when.
But I know there's the promotional tour for Cowboys and Indians. He told it because there
Which John Ford directed.
John Ford did direct. But
Right.
there are these YouTube
Beyond the
videos
Grave.
where it's like Grazer, Spielberg,
Sure.
Howard, Favreau, the Four Masters, the Titans. And it's just them talking about the cinematic arts. It's them trying to be like Favreau, welcome to the club, right? And there's one of those videos that went semi-viral with him telling that story. In the directed by John Ford documentary that Bogdanovich made, he tells this story. I think he told for an AFI thing once. He's told versions of the story before. So when you hear that David Lynch is going to play John,
you're
I'm
like, it's going to be this,
the
right?
scene. It's going to be
this
the scene.
But it is, I have been waiting, and then I've sort of forgotten about it. Then I'm like, wait a second.
You're so
Sort of
deep
like,
in the movie.
Okay,
right?
so
You're like,
we're ending
oh,
on this, aren't we?
interesting.
And it's just, it's just perfect. He sits there, he waits. There's the old receptionist lady, right?
He comes in covered in smooches.
Comes in covered in red lipstick.
It's like my fucking Lorne Michaels You'll Get Sad Eventually story, which I've told on the pod before, where it's like, I remember every single visual detail of these 90 seconds of my life.
Yes.
Right? It's so clear that every element of this is etched into his brain. When he tells the story in all these interviews, he talks about he comes in covered in smooches. The receptionist follows after him. She walks out a minute later. The handkerchiefs are all red now.
Yes.
Like every single detail of this.
So what is it exactly? Because you just saw it.
So it's Bernie Fine says,
no, I mean,
can't help you. You don't want to be
I know
in a
why
movie.
he's meaning. I mean, like,
You
what
want
is he?
to-
The
right.
painting. Look at the painting.
He says, he's a kid. What do you know about art?
Right. He's
'Cause
smoking a big pipe.
Everyone's warning him like
stogie.
5 minutes.
It's a stogie, not a
It's
pipe. Sorry,
probably
sorry,
one,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Take off the tie, he'll like you more.
Right.
You'll have a better shot.
It
I
is
think she
really
says.
funny how they're all right. They're trying to prep him. Yeah.
Right. And then he walks in and tries to do the like, Mr. Ford, I love your movies. Shut up.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about that.
Sucking on this fucking cigar,
Yeah.
right? And he's like, art. What do you know about art? And he's like, well, I love movies. Not movies, art.
Right.
And he's like, go over there. Look at that painting. What do you see? And he's like, it's like the cowboy and no, not that. The horizon. Where's the horizon? It's here at the bottom. Okay, next. Next paint.
Look at the next paint.
That one.
Yeah.
What do you see? And he repeats the same mistake.
Right. He's like, the
It's like a
cowboys
cavalry.
around a
No. Fuck that. Where's the horizon? Up at the top.
Yeah.
And then I believe he just basically says, if the horizon is at the top, it's interesting. If the horizon is at the bottom, it's interesting. If the horizon is in the middle, it's fucking boring.
Yes.
Now get the fuck out of my office. Now, the time Spielberg has told this story in different places, sometimes it changes a little.
A little bit.
In the Cowboys and Indians version, which I rewatched,
Cowboys and Aliens.
the Cowboys and Aliens
You
version,
rewatched Cowboys and Aliens.
the movie.
Yeah.
And then why did I rewatch this?
Awful.
Yeah, I rewatched I'd never maybe seen the full directed by John Ford thing as well
Sure.
last night. So I rewatched that or watched it.
Yeah.
And I watched this Cowboys and Aliens video. In that version, the way he tells it, John Ford says, if you can figure out the difference between what it means when the horizon's at the top and that the horizon's at the bottom, then maybe you have a chance of making a decent picture.
Yes. I feel like Spielberg has turned it into something more funny.
Right.
Because it's a movie.
He takes a
Right.
little bit of the import away from it. But the lesson of that is basically for the first time he's talking to someone who actually does this thing
Yeah.
and says to him, like, they tell me you're a picture maker,
Right.
dismissive. He's not impressed with you.
Right.
Now he's basically like, you need to learn what you want to say.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Here's this kid who this whole movie has just not really understood why.
He's good at making movies.
It
He's
opens
good at making
doors for
things look
him.
good.
It
Yeah.
changes his relationships to other people in ways both good and bad. He doesn't know what he wants to say. The movies he's making are all just, it'd be fun to make a war movie because I just saw a war movie with my friends.
Right.
It'd be fun to make a Western because I just saw Man Who Shot Liberty Valance or whatever. And for the first time, Ford's basically saying to him, you need to understand what these images are saying and what you want to say with them.
Right.
He walks out.
This is it. Because I knew the Ford, and I sort of knew the parameters of the Ford
Yeah.
story. The thing that surprised me was the final shot of the movie.
And I've seen so many people say, Griffin, you're going to lose your fucking mind when you see the final shot of this movie. And I'm like, what could this
What could
final
it be? It's him running
shot
through
be?
the studios, he's on the lot.
Much like the Tar ending, which I will not spoil for anyone because it's not a Tar ending, Tar episode.
Yeah.
So many people say, you will not believe the fucking ending of Tar. And I'm like, well, now I'm ruined because I'm going to spend the whole movie trying to guess what the ending is.
But you couldn't.
You cannot.
You truly can't.
It is fundamentally impossible to guess the ending of Tar.
Yes.
And
it
I'm
is.
sitting here up until this last moment. I'm like, what fucking shot could he pull out at this moment?
Yeah.
And if it's just this shot of him walking down the alleyway in between
Soaring,
the studios and the back lot, the sound stages, like that's a nice shot. But why do people say this was a knockout? And then there's a fucking herky-jerky
Yes.
camera tilt
Yes.
to frame up.
The camera essentially drops to the floor to look up. Yes.
So the horizon, it's like one of the legs of the tripod
Yes,
goes
yeah.
out. So that no longer the horizon is at the middle.
Yes.
It's in a more interesting
so
place.
Good. Oh God, it makes me so happy.
But it's also
just
one of these
thinking
things
about
where
it.
it's like, it's one of these moments that takes you out of the movie pointedly
Yes.
to say,
Initially, Spielberg was going to say cut, and he decided that's too cheesy.
the one step.
I just want
Right.
the camera to drop.
Right, but you just suddenly become aware of
Yeah.
the construction. This is a movie.
And you're
that
also like, it does look better.
it does.
Like-
He was right.
Like it's Spielberg being both like, this is fundamental
Yeah.
and like, this is a thing I can't ever not do.
Yeah.
But he's also like, it's easy. Put the
when it-
camera on the floor.
When it happens,
Looks
at
better.
the first moment, I was like, this is really sloppy for a Spielberg movie. Like it took a millisecond
did?
for me to process.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh my God.
You're like, camera fell down. Hey, someone pick up the camera.
Yanish usually is smoother on the moves.
You're
than
going to
that.
break it.
It's a fall down. It's
You know
expensive
how
camera.
expensive they
So
are?
this whole movie's been about these fucking expensive cameras. What a picture.
What a picture.
I turned to Ben.
4 out of 25.
I turn to Ben and I said, it's all in there.
Mm.
And I said, what?
Yeah, Ben truly went, what the fuck are you talking
Huh?
about? And I was like, that movie's about everything.
Mm.
That movie's about everything. It's not about movies in a glib way. It's about like all of us trying to understand why movies have any weird power over us.
Damn right.
Why we want to watch these things, why we want to make these things, and simultaneously about understanding that you're never going to totally understand your parents, which is the fundamental tragedy that all of us will live through to some degree or another in our lives.
You know,
Inescapable.
it's about feelings and how difficult it is to express them.
And how to
process
find a
them.
language in your life to be able to express them.
Not to invoke Tar again, in fact, but I just saw Tar with my wife. I saw her.
Humble
I saw Lydia. I met her.
Yeah.
Again. I'd
Yeah.
seen her before, meet her again.
Yeah.
She's real.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, I'm like doing what you're doing. I'm like going on about what I liked about it. And,
Yeah.
and you know, what's so interesting about the character. And my wife was like, she's got a lot of feelings and she wants to express them. It's tough for her to express them. And I was like, that's a
That's
pretty
why you
good way of
married
putting
her.
it.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on with Sammy Fabelman.
Let's play the box office game.
Well, we
Great. There
can't.
is no box office
Perfect.
game. The movie
That's
hasn't
the
come out.
episode.
Movie comes out in a week.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that a little movie called Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Oh, right. It comes out tomorrow at the time we're recording.
Will be
this. Yeah.
atop the box office
Yes.
when Fabelmans is
Do we
in
wanna
limited
guess?
release. Yeah, it'll be Black Panther: Wakanda Forever,
Mhm.
and then it will, because that's the only movie coming out
Right.
in wide release.
What do you think
because
Wakanda Forever is going to do?
That's
I feel like
actually a
that's
good
the question of, is it going to be a little under the original or a little over the
It'll
original?
be under the original, right? What was the
The
original?
original's 209, I want to say.
It'll be under that, won't it? It's just hard these days to get that.
Right.
I think it'll be like 150.
That would be a lot under. I feel like most people are guessing between 175 and 190.
Hmm.
And Disney's like, maybe we can outdo the original by like 2 million.
Damn. I mean, good for them. I don't think so. I think it'll be like 175. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. I think that's the safe bet.
And then it's gonna be like Black Adam, Ticket to Paradise, you
Right.
know, Lal Lal Crocodile.
Right. Black Adam doing like 10. Ticket
like,
to Paradise
Smile.
doing like 7.
Yeah.
Lyle
right.
and Smile doing like 5 or 3. Yeah.
I think maybe Armageddon Time is expanding, so that'll probably do like 115, 120.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Ben is opening the door to get our deli meat.
Perfect timing. But yeah.
You've seen
and then-
Wakanda Forever?
Yes.
You liked it?
It is a very I liked it okay. It's a
Yeah.
very there's a really good movie that would have starred Chadwick Boseman in there, and then Chadwick Boseman died.
Yeah.
And it feels like the Namor stuff,
Yeah.
the stuff that was always there,
Yeah.
is the best part of the movie.
But that doesn't totally work without.
It's just tough to find a movie with where everyone has to be sad because the guy's dead, because the real guy is dead, and that is sad. And it does a good job wrestling with it, I would say. But it's just tough to make a fun movie, and a comic book movie with like Marvel cameos in it.
I
you
was
know?
so surprised.
But there's a lot of. I think it's a very interesting movie, honestly.
I'm excited to see it. I'm going to see it tomorrow. It's certainly the most excited I've been for a Marvel thing in a while. I was surprised that they got the movie up on its feet so quickly after Boseman died, considering that Coogler was like, I did not know the script was done. It was written for him.
Right, we had a totally different script.
And then when I saw the trailer and it was so forward with the grieving and the loss of this character, I was like, oh, fuck, did he truly go back to the drawing board and totally rejigger the movie?
Yeah.
And everything I've heard now feels like he kept about half of the movie without T'Challa in it and then made the other half about the absence of T'Challa.
Yeah.
But
That's the
half
vibe.
of the stuff you can tell this should have had this other character. in it.
Sure enough, yeah. I mean, it works, but I don't know. I'm seeing it again tomorrow
With your wife?
Yeah, so like I'll have more feelings on it, I guess.
Yeah. Did you skip the last couple of Marvels in theaters?
Thor, I was like, I ain't seeing that shit again.
Right. And she didn't see Eternals?
She did not see Eternals.
She saw Spider-Man.
She saw Eternals on
Shang-Chi.
Disney Plus. She saw Spider-Man. She saw Shang-Chi. She saw Doctor Strange in theaters.
Black Widow?
Well, we saw that on like Disney Plus.
Sure.
Like that
I'm
was
just saying,
more deep.
Your wife.
Yeah, she'll watch the Marvel movies, but she did not watch Love and Thunder in theaters. We
She
watched
started
that on
skipping
Disney
some.
Plus.
I know a lot of it's being a mother now.
It's the parent thing. She would have seen Love and Thunder. No, it's true. I mean, but the thing with Love and Thunder was I had just seen it that week,
Yeah.
and I was like,
I
I
don't
ain't
wanna do
fucking
this.
seeing that twice.
Yeah.
Go with a friend or don't.
Yeah.
Like, and like she was just sort of like, whatever.
How I felt.
Not that
Still have not watched it.
you should watch it.
I watch it.
You say that.
I'm going to at some point. I'm going to be cooped up in a hotel in Rochester.
That's
for a
true.
month.
That's
Yeah.
true.
I think I'm going to watch a lot of things I've been putting off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're done.
Okay.
Goodbye. The Fabelmans is an incredible movie.
Yeah, I think it rules. I loved it. It reminded me of what I care about.
Damn right.
Now let's
Help me
go
work
eat
through some of my own shit.
damn fucking.
Yeah,
let's
eat
eat
some
this.
meat.
It smells so goddamn good.
Yeah.
here right
And
now.
then we'll do a quick little Wendell and Wild. Just a quick one.
Yeah. So if you want to try to carbon date these records, next week in release schedule is Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. So you're
yeah.
going to get 2 Sellects.
Yeah, you'll get Nightmare Before Christmas, you'll get 3 Selects.
Okay.
And James and the Giant Peach and Monkey Bone.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we will discuss Avatar: The Way of Water on December 18th. And then we're going to be off for Christmas and New Year's and then back on January 8th with Coraline.
This is boring stuff to talk about, but now having seen a lot of these movies, it does feel like Fabelmans is winning Best Picture unless Babylon or Avatar are like transcendent masterpieces,
Maybe.
right?
Yeah, we'll see. Let's turn off the mics.
I just think the Wakanda Forever winning Best Picture thing is done.
Oh, yeah, that was never going to happen.
Never
I
gonna
suppose
happen.
if it was something like
If it was
I
right.
don't know. Come on, let's turn off the mic. We did great.
Okay.
I'm hungry.
Fabelmans, we're
I'm
hungry. I got to pee.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. David is already pushing his microphone away. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media and helping to produce the show. Thank you to Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Lane Montgomery and The Great American Novel for our theme song. Alex Barron, AJ McKeon for our editing. Thank you to JJ Birch for our research, even though he didn't do shit on this episode. Happy holidays, JJ. Go to blankcheckpod.com for some links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon, Blank Check special features, where in the month of December, we are uncovering the 2 National Treasure movies and also talking The Walk. Tune in next week, as we said, for The Night Before Christmas, a new miniseries entitled Ben Hosley's The Nightmare Before Christmas. And as always, we're about to eat some fucking pastrami sandwiches.
Should I just get a quart of matzo ball soup?
Yes.
Yes. Do they have celery soda? They must, right?
They probably do. I mean, I feel like this is actually good to have on mic because
For this episode? Yeah.
yeah,
For
like,
Wendell and Wild? Maybe not.
yeah, they've got a celery.
Oh,
You nut! I hate that shit.
it's so good.
Ugh.
Medicinal.
Yeah, I mean, that is. I love a tonic.
Yes.
A vegetable tonic.
Yes.
Cure my ailments.
Yeah.
My humors.
I got the humors.
Yes.
Have you gotten your humors vaccine yet?
Oh God, just the bile and the What are the 4 humors? Fuck, I want to look it up. The bile
Mhm.
and the black bile and the phlegm. Those
Sure,
are the 2
sure,
I've had taken
sure.
care of.
Yeah.
Ooh, pigs in blanket. Am I crazy?
Yes, you're insane. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Hmm.
That'd be like bringing a monkey into the home.
I wanted to laugh.